Okay, we're live. So good evening and welcome to the June 22nd, 2020 regular meeting of the school committee of the town of Foxborough. We're having a couple Zoom difficulties getting our entire committee on board, so we're going to begin. Our first item on our agenda is the school committee reorganization. We're going to flip the COVID-19 update with the school committee reorganization so that hopefully we can get Mr. Reuter online and have us all present for the reorganization. So if Dr. Berdos, if you would just start with the COVID-19 update, we'll jump right in there and then we will backtrack to our reorganization.
All right, well, I think it's very appropriate to start with a COVID update and to talk about graduation because it was a very different graduation because of COVID-19. And first of all, congratulations to our 2020 graduates. They are just amazing in what they've done with moving forward and their resilience, and the graduation really did end up being really meaningful and special. And first of all, I would like to thank Foxborough Cable Access for their coverage, not only of scholarship night and class night, but of the parade, even with our seniors, and then graduation itself. So it really was a special day, and we couldn't have done it without the work of many, and that includes our public safety with the Foxborough Police Department, our school bus drivers as far as transportation, leading the procession with Dennis Fletcher and Kathy Layton, moving forward, and Crichton, sorry, not Layton. And all of our graduates, as they processed from the Ahern and saw all of our staff at the beginning at the Ahern Middle School, and just really the vibe at the Ahern, from what we heard, was wonderful. And as they processed to the high school in their groups, they really did have, I think, under the circumstances, a wonderful experience. And what we heard over and over was it was the staff that was there to cheer them on as they came up the drive from the Ahern up to the high school and greeted them along the way. And then also our students, after they crossed the stage, went back and were here at Town Hall and along Mechanic Street and South Street to cheer on their peers, which I thought was a wonderful tribute too. So we thank them, we thank the community for coming out along the way and really cheering on our graduates, and as they crossed the stage and turned their tassels and really began the next chapter. So I also wanted to thank our maintenance and custodial staff for the stage and all of the work that they did, and particularly the Foxborough High School administration. There was a lot of planning, a lot of details, and a lot of thought that went into making that day really special for our graduates.
I just want to interject that I had many texts and emails that day saying what a wonderful experience it was and how people were impressed with the attention to detail, and I can attest to the very good vibe at the Ahern School because I was there.
You were there.
But it really was wonderful, and I knew it would be, but it was great to see, and each student really got their moment when they crossed the stage, and it was wonderful. So I echo all of your thanks, so I just wanted to interject.
And I think too, to your point, where we had many of our own staff members who had graduates themselves, so to hear the same positive feedback from them, I thought that was a wonderful compliment to the high school staff as well. So the other thing that I wanted to mention too, because I think that it's part of COVID and all that we're going through, and speaking of Foxborough really being a strong community, and that is when other community members reach out. So as an example, Bob Cutler had reached out to us for the latest election and was talking about how much more difficult it would be without the tremendous assistance from our staff in the Foxborough schools. And so again, our custodial staff and all that they did to really go above and beyond to make the situation work. So it's so nice to have them recognized, as well as Pam McCauley, for the work that was done. The other part, as far as the COVID-19 update, the extended year services for our students, our special education students who receive as part of their individual education program. I have Dr. Einsel. She's on Zoom right now as part of being one of our retirees. But what I wanted her to do at this juncture here is to speak a little bit about the special education and extended year services, because where it's going to look different, we've received guidance that we're allowed to have some in-person, face-to-face support for our students as long as we follow all of the protocols and procedures and safety guidelines that are in place. And it's so important if we have that opportunity to have our students back, that we want to have them back. And so I'll turn it over here for just a minute or two to Dr. Einsel.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Einsel.
Yes, good evening. Yes, this ESY is going to look actually the same. We're going to be in person this summer, except for the preschool, which will be remote. Although Russell Johnson, who's the Associate Commissioner for Special Education, has said, see if you can do in person for the students with more challenging disabilities. We decided to do it for everyone. So students that are in our programs, as well as our students that are receiving tutorials, we are going to be providing in person, brick and mortar, at their Hearn Middle School. And although it was initially a little daunting, we thought, can we organize this? And we sat down and we talked to people. Our nurse leader, Jen Rosenberg, and I collaborated with Dr. Burtis and Bill Yuka, and we decided, yes, we can do this fairly easily, actually. We have the PPEs, personal protective equipment, the guidance from the CDC, a training module for people and medical staff. So we'll have an LPN and RN on site. Now, the question was, could we get staff to do this? And it was really interesting. Within one day, we had staff, the program staff and the tutorial staff that I had already signed up for remote learning said, yes, we want to come in. We want to be with students. So that was very exciting to me and they were very enthusiastic. They want students back in the building and they want to be with them. So our staff is eager, and we're getting into a routine of how we can expect maybe the fall to look like as well. We've learned a lot from our remote experience during the pandemic, mostly that our students with special needs really do not do well with remote learning. They really need to have people in front of them. Fortunately, that was not possible. However, we were able to provide sustainable and equitable services by providing weekly programming by our program teachers, modifications and accommodations for our moderate special needs teachers with the Gen Ed team, and with our remote service, Flipgrid, which was a part of 365, Microsoft 365, our related service providers, PT, physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech and language, were able to provide asynchronous learning. That means that they could videotape themselves doing lessons for their students and send it out to parents so that parents could access that when their schedules allowed. Maybe not the greatest, but at this point in time, at that point in time, it was really important that we connect with students and do something sustainable. And we got very nice reviews regarding that. Very challenging times. So they're still challenging times. We're using a variety of platforms to deliver these services. Dojo at the preschool, Buzz and Flipgrid at the elementary, and for our service providers like occupational therapy, PT, OT, and at the high school and middle school, we were using Teams. We were able to roll out the Teams program through, again, it's a Microsoft 365 at the elementary, probably mid-May, and we were training staff on that. I have to say that I admired the students, the parents, and the staff, learning all these different platforms and working collaboratively with us during this unprecedented time. We learned a lot under pressure, that we had resilience and that we could depend on each other, and working collaboratively with parents. But what is next for the fall? Well, our ESY programming will also inform our fall programming as well. And Corey, the new Student Services Director, and I have been online working with each other, and he was in today. We will see what the fall looks like after we have the extended school year services. If it is remote or a combination of remote and in person, we will learn, we will use Teams and other platforms. We will also supplement, because when we did the flip grid with our service providers in OT, PT, and speech and language, we were able to build a library of supplemental things that we can use during the school year. So even though we may be in person or live on a platform, we can also supplement those services with these different Flipgrid videos. We've had a lot of positive comments regarding what's gone on in during the pandemic times, but we also have had some situations where people aren't as pleased, but I think that we have reached out to those people and really tried to work with them. I think sustainability and equitability is still the key to this. That being said, parents, thank you for working with us and being collaborative with us. The staff have done an unbelievable job. And Amy, I know that that's a little long, but you know, this is my last meeting.
Well, thank you, Dr. Einzel, for that. Appreciate that.
And we'll talk a little bit more too, obviously, when we get into a later agenda item on the remote learning survey and what we've learned and, you know, making adjustments for going forward. The other part, as far as the COVID-19 update to make note of, is with the CARES Act funding, which is funds that have come in to towns and cities to provide for things that are COVID related. And as an example, one-to-one was not something that we were in as far as a one-to-one technology environment, which therefore did not allow us to be able to have live teaching because of not everyone having a device. Even though we deployed over 200 devices, they were still shared in homes, and we still had some students that didn't have internet access. We deployed hotspots for them as well. But importantly, moving forward, we were able to use the CARES Act funds, and it's a grant for such as technology, and we've now purchased enough devices, so we will be one-to-one in the fall if we find ourselves in a remote learning situation or in a hybrid situation, and whatever the fall may look like, we're going to be in a very different place than where we were these last 3 months. So that CARES Act funding is something that is a game changer for us because of what the allowable expenditures are for it. And I thought I would just have Mr. Yukna speak a little bit about that, because not only are we using it for the devices, we're also using it for purchasing PPE, for cleaners for buildings, to be able to be prepared for the fall.
Yeah, so as Amy just said, the background on the CARES Act is really, it's the for states, it's the funding like individuals got when they received their check from the government. So the town of Foxboro, basically, in the way the calculation was done, had $1.5 million that was allotted to it. There were 2 phases to it: money that was put out through June 30th, and then money that would go out after July 1st. And but the CARES Act is solely for expenses that were not budgeted, not expected, and relating to issues around COVID-19. So you couldn't use it just to supplement salaries. You couldn't use it to buy regular things that you would buy within your normal budget just for the sake of buying them. It had to have a cause and effect around COVID-19. So as Amy just said, what we decided, and the only way we felt we could survive any kind of interruptions in the fall from not being in a classroom, would be to be in the one-to-one environment. So we did put in the first stages. You had to put in a claim for what you would want to spend the money for as of through June 30th. And while we had about $32,000 worth of expenses for PPE that we had incurred up to that point, which we did put in, we also had the computers. So we put in almost $790,000 worth of expenses with the computers under that, and it was approved through FEMA and through the state. Matter of fact, the money already has come into the town. And basically, we have, obviously, some of the stuff we had already bought anyways, because we had to clean the buildings and keep people safe on that sense. Some of it we were buying as additional stockpiling to make sure we would have enough, when school starts up. And we continue to do that, quite honestly. It's as things are coming back in. We were fortunate in that we placed orders very early on the equipment, so we actually now have the disinfectant machines for every building in the district. We also have the larger versions that can do the two bigger schools. They're kind of like backpack style units, so you can go through much faster with them. So we have all of that already in stock. We have the chemicals that back that up. We do have gloves, masks, face shields. So as Sandra said, that we're going to basically start off this the summer program with that equipment and just see exactly what is needed, how it works, and what other things we potentially need to back up ourselves. So I think at this point we've done pretty well. We're going to continue to obviously follow whatever guidance comes out, but also work on equipment things that we need. We've put up a lot of plexiglass in different office areas to protect not only our staff but people coming in. So you'll see when you go into the high school and the middle school and all the elementaries in the fall, there will be protective plexiglass between the secretaries and anybody coming in. Again, all of this trying to pre-plan for what we expect will be, a little bit unknown for the fall season itself. So we wanted to get the computer order in early, so that was one of the reasons we didn't wait for it to be a July 1st or after, because everybody's doing the same thing. So you can imagine with the amount of computer orders that are going out throughout the country, not just Massachusetts, that these suppliers are really kind of being hammered with it. But we feel that we've got it in early enough so that we should, with any luck, be able to have them in early August. We did sign the deal with the supplier that will actually preload all of our basic requirements onto the computers from a software point of view, as well as inventory tag, as well as unpack and put them into larger pack kits for us. So we can kind of save ourselves some time in that sense, because they're capable of doing 1,000 in no time as compared to how long it would take us to do a couple thousand. So
This is one computer per student.
correct. Yes.
And for staff.
Right. And for staff, because obviously that's the only way it's really going to work.
So we're purchasing 3,000 computers?
We're purchasing about 2,600 computers, but we also have about 400 recent laptops that we've purchased as well that are the same basic ilk, and so we have enough to basically make it through this process that way. There are obviously additional things that we will need to purchase, backup power supplies, the little pens, just a lot of ancillary stuff. We're buying a lot of software. That's the security software that goes around these items as well. Fortunately, we have a good network, so we're not as concerned about our network, although we have to boost its strength.
Yeah.
And that is unfortunately one of the issues that the CIP budget left us a little shy on by dropping that in half. But again, I think with where we're going with this right now, we also have another grant that we filed for and received that will help us fund some of those issues as well. So I think we're in pretty good shape overall, but it is, again, a moving target. We will be putting in against the balance, as will the town. For the town side, obviously, police did the same thing. They had a lot of overtime where they had shifts that were out, so they were able to put in for replacement cost. And in the end, even though we've all paid for it, it will recycle back into the town through free cash as another way to help boost that.
What does that do to the technical support department as far as?
Well, the ironic thing, it's a good question. The ironic thing is that while we were not a one-to-one district, we were almost a one-to-one district with the number of computers that we maintained. We just had more of the philosophy that it was within the classroom and within labs. Okay. We have probably in the district over 12 computer labs. Well, I know we have more than that. We've quite a bit more. Yeah, with desktops. Mm-hmm. So obviously we're going to pull off the desktops. Fortunately, there was a whole series of those that were about to be retired that we were going to need to replace anyway. So this will be, a good way of doing that. So it is going to be still challenging because you have much more volatility with a laptop than you have with a desktop that doesn't move. So there's going to be more issues relative to that for our staff. But we're not in the end increasing our quantity, by 3,000 computers. Okay. We're increasing it, in effect probably by 20%, if you will.
And it also makes a huge difference with them coming pre-imaged.
Right.
That is a really big time saver.
Yes.
For all of those.
I think Michelle has a question.
Yeah, one quick question regarding Wi-Fi. So are we boosting the Wi-Fi in the high school and the middle school? Because that's always been a problem. I know myself, if I'm ever there, as well as.
The problem with Wi-Fi is not that we don't have a strong system. We have a very strong system. The problem is because we were in a bring your own device environment, we basically opened it up for every device that hit the building. So when your child walked in the door with a smartphone, an iPad, and a computer, those were 3 devices immediately going after the network and creating a problem. What we will more than likely be doing is closing down the network now, especially during the day, to our devices, which would then in effect reduce the load that's on the network to make the network stronger, if you will. Okay. We still know that one of the biggest changes and where we're going to need some additional money over time is that the AP, the device that basically the wireless works off of, generationally they have changed significantly from when we even put them in just a few years ago. That gives you more speed and more density within rooms. Again, the concept was originally that you might have 25 devices in a classroom. Well, the reality was we had 100 in a classroom, even though that's not what we were expecting because of all those other devices. And whether or not they use them, they are constantly searching up to the Wi-Fi. So I think that's one of the concepts we've already talked about, was basically to reduce down how the load will be, especially during the day of classes. After that, we can open back up, when they're doing stuff, before or after school type of thing.
So the only other piece that I would add as far as the COVID-19 update, which is the question that everyone's asking, is what will September look like? And the answer is, we do not know yet. We expected guidance coming out last week. We had a call with the commissioner on Friday, and we're waiting on the governor's briefing, which hopefully will take place tomorrow. And with that information, it's going to be preliminary guidance for schools and what it will look like in the fall. We also know it will be subject to change over the summer, depending on what takes place. But one of the things that has become very clear is, and we've known this all along, really looking at the data, but it's the medical field that they're relying on. And so, one of the comments he said was, in education, we're the professionals and we know education. But when it comes to the virus, that's the medical field. And so all of the task forces that are in place, we're taking that information that will then guide, the governor will then guide the commissioner, and we should expect that information this week. We're not waiting. We are planning, as you have heard, just now, all of the protective equipment that we're purchasing, all of the things that we're installing, from the devices to all of the PPE, because we want our students back. We want to be back in schools. And you'll see as we go over the remote learning survey, our parents, as long as it's safe to do so, want our students back in classrooms too. So the last part is that the summer reading and math is going to look a little bit different as we recover and get ready for reopening for September. So if you want to just take a quick moment to talk about that.
Our summer math and reading program this year is called Pathways to Mastery. We did hear some concerns from parents about maybe time lost on learning, and we know that our remote learning plan wasn't perfect and we did the best that we could, but we wanted to provide a supplemental opportunity for students to attain mastery of the standards in their grade level. So we started with the platform Freckle. Many of our students are familiar with it, formerly known as Front Row. Parents can sign up for it. We created videos for parents to go through, so that almost like a YouTube video for how to sign up. Students take a little diagnostic assessment that's 12 questions. It figures out exactly where they are in their level and adapts to them, so it's a totally personalized experience, so they get exactly what they need. We have it for K through 9 for math, and K through 12 for ELA, but in the 6 through 9 math, we also are using Alex, which is a math platform that we use in the classroom as well. Since the students and families were familiar with it, we decided to keep going with that. The best part about it for teachers, having some formative assessment to begin the year with, students will come back with a report that parents will print and send in, and we can actually see where they are so that we know how to hit the ground running when we get them back in our classrooms in the fall. So we're really excited about it. We really hope a lot of people take advantage of it. It is a fantastic free opportunity for our students.
Great. Excellent. Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for the update, and I need to backtrack a little bit because, Michelle, I was very remiss. I'm so sorry. I got completely rattled by our Zoom difficulties, and I forgot to welcome and congratulate our new school committee member, Michelle Raymond. So welcome to the team. We're glad to have you. Is there anything you want to say, on your first meeting before we move forward on our agenda?
I'm really glad to be here and hope that I'm just looking forward to helping out as much as I can for what's obviously going to be an interesting year next year.
Yeah, that is absolutely true, and an understatement. So welcome aboard, and we're glad to have you here. I also was remiss in not thanking everyone who turned out for town meeting to support our school budget, and actually the town budget, and we had a great turnout at town meeting. We had at least 200 people there, and a really resounding support for our budget. I was very grateful for that. So thank you to everybody who came out, and thank you to everybody who ran in the election as well. It's always great to see people step up, and we had a couple contested elections, including for school committee, and it's just wonderful to see people turn out and show up to be part of our local government. So thank you for that. And Michelle, again, I'm sorry, I should have started with that, so I apologize. We do have a quorum. Brent, I don't see Brent remote, but we do have a quorum, so we do need to move forward with our school committee reorganization, which should have been our first item, but we flipped. So this is that we, at our first meeting post-town elections, which this is, we do our annual school committee reorganization. Our policy is in the packets. I'm sure you've all reviewed it. If you have any questions, we can go through it, but there's no need to read it. What we first do is take nominations from the floor for the chair, the position of chair, and they don't need to be seconded, and then we do that by a roll call vote. Okay.
So I would like to nominate Richard Pearson to be the chairperson next year for the school committee.
Excellent, and thank you, Rob. Are there any other nominations? Well, seeing none, we will have a roll call vote.
Okay.
And we will begin with Michelle. So you just say aye or?
Aye.
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 All right, so congratulations to the new chair. I think very happy to have you move over to the center chair. And
You sure you want me to?
well,
Wait, you have to wipe it down.
I have to wipe it down.
I have plenty of life. So now you will take on the rest of the meeting, and we'll proceed with nominations for vice chair. I think you're going to do a great job. You bring so much to the table, being a lifelong Foxborough resident, a graduate of Foxborough Public Schools, a former administrator here, and now school committee member. So, now chair of the school.
You need longer arms. Just
I need longer arms,
right?
But thank you for your nomination and your vote. And I was thinking about this, hoping that would happen to me, but my path started, and I've done these little history things for you, but I'll just give it to you quick. My path started in 1979 with Frank Toomey, the principal of the middle school, when I ran for a class officer. And as the principal of the middle school, he motivated me to be a leader, and then it continued with Bill Rex, the principal of the high school, who motivated me through high school. So I'm really pleased and proud that my career, my life in leadership could start back in the 70s in Foxborough and wind up here. So happy to do it and happy to represent the town in a great school system.
Well, we are lucky to have you. And it has been an honor for me to be chair, but I'm very ready for somebody else to take on this honor as
well. What a great opportunity to hand off this vote. You get to move over.
Have the chair.
Well, okay, I'll take it again. We'll do the whole flip, huh?
Ooh, musical chairs.
Tina's wasting no time.
Well, we shouldn't. We're running out of time.
I know we have a long agenda.
Well, then, if I could take nominations from the floor for vice chair of the committee.
It would be my pleasure to nominate Mr. Rob Canfield for vice chair of the school committee.
Thank you. Any other nominations from the floor for vice chair? Hearing and seeing none, roll call vote. We'll start again. Michelle?
Aye.
Rob?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. There we go. We have a vice chair. So you can move on up.
I didn't even spread my stuff out. Congratulations.
Well, thank you very much. I'm looking forward to it. It's been a great first year.
Yeah.
We've certainly made a great contribution to the team as well. So thank you.
I'll do the public comment real quick. And then we'll do the parents. Okay. So thank you. Congratulations, Rob.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Thank you for the nomination.
We're here and we got it. So let's do it, all right? Next on the agenda is our open public comment. As many of you know, in this time of COVID with the conditions we've had the community inbox open to the public for their comment. So I'd like to read 3 public comments, which are important for us to continue to do as they come in. The first public comment that I have to read is from Melissa Foster from Bentwood Street. Dear school committee members, get my glasses on. As the entire nation is challenged to examine the long history of white supremacy brought into focus by the recent mass protests triggered by the murder of George Floyd, it is time for Foxborough to look at our own heritage and correct the mistakes that we have long overlooked due to our immersion in white supremacy culture. To that end, I am asking the school committee to please begin the process of changing the name and racist logo of the Foxborough Warriors to something that better reflects the community's understanding that it is not acceptable to have a school symbol that is racist and demeaning of the first inhabitants of the land where our beautiful town is located. Please understand I am not accusing any individuals of being white supremacists, but rather pointing out that the systems that all of us have become inured to, and that our current government has employed since its founding, are built on the idea of the white race somehow being superior and more deserving than all other races. Thank you very much. I look forward to hearing from you. Sincerely, Melissa Foster. The second comment into the community mailbox was from Jennifer and Gary Locke of Lawton Lane. As first grade parents at the IGO, we would like to voice our concerns over a cut to one of the second grade teachers at the IGO next year. We are requesting that this position be reinstated to address the high needs of the rising second grade at IGO and to make the class size more equitable across the district. This cut would increase class size to 21 and 22 students for this grade level, which has a higher comparative level of need than the other second graders in the district, while the other 2 schools maintain their current smaller class size. According to the school enrollment data on the DESE website, in the 2018-19 school year, 26 out of 65 students in this grade at the IGO were classified as high needs, representing 40% of their class. In this same grade at the Taylor, 8 out of 41 students, or 19.5%, were classified as high needs in 2018-19, and at the Borough, 6 out of 44 students, or 13.6%, were classified as high needs. The proposed second grade class size at these schools for next year is 20 and 21 students at the Taylor and 17 students per class at the Borough. When these concerns were raised to Dr. Burdos, she stated that the IGO has additional staff to help support the needs of the students at the IGO, such as an additional special needs teacher, an additional reading specialist, and a full-time ELL teacher. However, the IGO has 62 more students than the Borough and 139 more students than the Taylor. In addition, the IGO is a Title I school, and it is my understanding that the funding for the additional reading specialist comes from the Title I grant. I would like to know what the other cuts are happening at the elementary level for next year. After attending town meeting, it seemed as though there was widespread support for the school budget. Why wasn't more money requested in next year's budget to maintain the same level of personnel at this school after such a challenging school year? Is there extra money left over this year's budget due to COVID-19 school closures that can be reallocated to maintain the current level of staffing? And finally, sent in from Karen Berg of Congdon Circle. Question: I know we are not aware of what the fall school schedule will look like. I am sure you have received concerns with the special education program, or lack thereof, during homeschooling. I know much of this was perhaps limited due to mass requirements. However, I strongly request that students on IEPs are given their needed support come to the fall. Modified plans are not enough. These students need the support as referenced in their IEP contracts. What are your plans to properly support these students going forward? Thank you for those comments, and we'll read those at every one of our meetings as we have asked you to send them in. Next on the agenda, and a few minutes late, and the people are already in the waiting room, is the recognition of retirees. Dr. Burdos, would you like to recognize them?
Sure, I would love to. Talk about a time to retire.
Brilliant.
So we have 9 faculty and staff members that are retiring this year. And as I look up at our, actually let me go through and read all 9, and then I'll let you know who is joining us by the Zoom call as well. So Kathy Gray, who is a special education teacher at the IGO, and Kathy is up there in the right-hand corner. I see Kathy. Sue Shea, who is the ELA Social Studies K-8 Curriculum Director, the bottom right-hand corner, Sue is up there. John Arecchia, I see him in the middle center, our technology education teacher at Foxborough High School. Dr. Sandra Einsel, our Director of Student Support Services, there on the far left corner. Linda Mealy, who is our current nurse leader and nurse over at the Borough School. And Bruce Storer, who is from our transportation department, as well as Diane Rule. And Kathy Layton from Extended Day, retired earlier this year, in September actually. And then Annette Grady, I see her in the bottom left-hand corner up there from Extended Day. So the many, many years, I did not add up, as I know some school committee members have done in the past.
I have in the past. It's a lot of years.
But when, just to kind of, to look back, so Kathy Gray, 21 years, Sue Shea, 32 years, John Arecchia, 11 years, Sandra Einsel, 5.5 years. And again, that's because they've come from other districts, so many, many, many more years of experience. Linda Mealy, 25 years. Bruce, Transportation, 20 years. Diane, 23 years. Kathy Layton, 27 years. And Annette, 17 years. So talk about amazing service to the students in Foxborough. So congratulations on your well-deserved retirement.
Yes.
Usually we get to hug everybody and
Yeah,
wish them well. So virtual hugs, and yes, it's standing ovation.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you all.
Well, thank you for just taking a few moments of your time tonight. It's not the same as you being with us at a meeting where you can go around, we can shake your hands, but just for you being with us and spending the time with us just for a few moments, I guess it's as much as we can do right now for you. But we certainly can never thank you enough for the years of service, dedication to our kids, the time you spend in your lives and your minds and with your families paying attention to our families is just huge in education. So thank you for all those years of service. Thank you for giving everything that you have to making our kids better. It's a wonderful thing, and we're very appreciative.
Well said.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for being here.
Thank you, everybody.
Enjoy retirement. Enjoy. It's well-deserved.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's not enough, but it's the best we can do, right?
We do have gifts for them.
Yes.
I saw Janet wrapping them, so it will be. I'm sure she's mailed them already.
It's hard, all of the end-of-year celebrations that we have to recognize all of their years. We're not able to have those, so it just feels kind of surreal to end the school year and not be able to have that closure and celebration to celebrate them.
Especially after so many years of service.
Oh my gosh. Amazing, amazing. Well, thank you. Next on agenda is approval of minutes. Any questions or additions to the minutes?
I did not have any.
I did not have any.
I do not have any either.
I'd be happy to make a motion to approve the June 1st, 2020 regular meeting minutes as presented.
Thank you.
And I'll second that.
Great. Hearing no other questions, all in favor of the minutes, please? 4-0. Great. Thank you all. Next on the agenda, Dr. Bertos and Dr. Mello will introduce our new elementary school principal for IGO, Ms. Kate Campbell.
So Kate, if we can have you come up to this, and as you're walking up, I'll give a little bit of background here. So Dr. Mello led the initial screening committee where we had 81 applicants for the principal position at the IGO. And that screening committee definitely talk about resilience and perseverance. The position was posted in February, and as soon as they started to meet face-to-face after the focus groups that took place, we were out. So they had one meeting face-to-face, and the rest of all of the different interviews and site visits, et cetera, were led by Dr. Bello virtually, and all of the members of the committee, which I'll have her state who they were in just a second. But so it was a very different experience. Our process is very thorough. It represents all different stakeholders, from teachers, administrators, parents, et cetera, and school committee members. But at the same time, a very different experience where the majority of it was virtual. So I want to personally thank you, because I know how much time went into the process from leading so many of them prior, and then at the same time having to really pivot and adjust as you've moved through the process. So if you want to say a minute, who helped you with that process as far as your committee members?
And these people, they got more evenings than they bargained for, that's for sure, right, Richard? Richard was on our committee, along with Karen Frazier, who I see up on the screen there, Michelle McCarthy, Noelle Hendrickson, who's our K-8 Math Science Curriculum Director, Erin McCarthy, who's a kindergarten teacher at the IGO, Kristen Walsh, who's a first grade teacher, Tara Toma, who's a second grade teacher, Jen Gray, who's a third grade teacher, and then we had Wendy Smith, reading specialist, we had our Kristen Siddle, guidance counselor, and we had our parent representatives, Elizabeth Figueroa and Justine Monahan. So it was a great group of people and a nice cross-section of the IGO school community. It was quite a marathon. We had multiple rounds, and we had a virtual site visit. We had virtual visits with staff and with families. And after all of that, we had our recommended finalist, which is Mrs. Kate Campbell. So welcome.
And you actually have her resume in your packet, but I wanted, just for those that may be viewing from home, so Kate comes with an extensive background in education, 20 plus years, where she was in Attleboro actually for 20 years and then had many different roles. Her background and training reflect really a rich variety of experiences. She began her career as an elementary and special education teacher. She served not only in the general education classroom and multiple grade levels, and special educator as well, teaching as an inclusion specialist, as a head teacher, as a K-4 literacy coach, and then as a principal. So the last 8 years, she's been a principal, with the last 7 enjoying her role not too far from here at the Anna Ware Jackson School in Plainville as the principal there. But what I wanted to point out here, which I think speaks so highly of Kate, from the initial screening committee, and they felt that she was really an impressive candidate with the energy and enthusiasm that she brought forward, describing her as genuine and authentic, very student-centered, valuing relationships became very clear, high expectations, and the strong background in special education and early literacy was something that the IGO staff was really impressed by and excited about, and just felt as though that you were going to be a great fit. And one of the screening committee members, I have a quote here from her. She seems like the perfect fit for the IGO and truly has the full package of experience: special education, regular education, reading, social, emotional. I didn't think I could be this excited about working with someone new and other than Mike, but I'm excited. Her experience and fresh perspective will enhance what we're already doing. Can't wait. So I think that that speaks really highly, and obviously as part of the process, I do extensive reference checking and wanted to share some of the comments that came from that as well. Describing Kate as approachable and extremely knowledgeable, completely committed to students and families, an exceptional leader and colleague, and a champion for children. Known for her enthusiasm, high standards, and ability to make everyone feel valued and respected. Her sincere commitment to building strong relationships and her tireless support of the social-emotional needs of students were sentiments shared about her over and over and over again. Passionate about every child, not only knowing every child's name, but what also came out was that you know about the students. So it's more than just knowing their name, and that you are dedicated to the child's education, but their overall well-being. And I'll just, before I turn it over and give Kate some time to share with you why she's interested in coming to Foxborough, I just had a few other quotes that I wanted to share. You're fortunate to have her. She's an exceptional principal with an unbelievable work ethic, extremely knowledgeable about effective instructional practice, and has been transformational in her tenure. She's passionate about everything she does and has accomplished more in the 7 years she has been here than all other principals I have had combined. Her commitment to leadership and productivity is complemented by her professionalism and "we've got this" attitude. Every student at Jackson knows Kate, believes in them, and therefore they are willing to go the extra mile. This is true for the families of the Jackson students as well. Kate supports each family and takes time to understand and value each family's individuality. Kate's dedication to her craft, commitment to staff, and uncanny ability to connect with and inspire her students are awe-inspiring. I've never met someone so dedicated to her profession, teachers, student, and families. Ms. Campbell is a great addition to a wonderful school community and a strong addition to our schools, and I know that she will be a strong addition to our IGO community and our district-wide team. So I will stop and, Kate, give you an opportunity to just tell the committee and others at home of why you're interested in joining us in Foxborough, and we're so pleased that you've accepted the position at IGO, and then can have other questions.
Thank you very much for those kind words. I'm very humbled by that, by the people who shared. I feel very lucky that I've been in this business for 28 years. I've loved all the different roles that I've done as an educator, and I can truly say 28 years later, I love coming to work every day. Remote learning's been tough, but we've kind of figured out a new normal for right now. We're hoping that we can get everybody back where they deserve to be, and that's in the buildings. A little bit about myself and why I think I'm so excited to come to Foxborough is that you all shine with what your passion is about your connection with your schools and your community, and that's something that's very important to me. And I think that I look forward to learning from Foxborough, but also bringing something to Foxborough, and I think everything in a relationship is a give and take, so I look forward to that. What's exciting for me is that I came from a bigger district where I was one of 5 principals, and then when I went to Plainville, and I've loved every single opportunity I've had to be an educator, and I want everyone to know that, as I am so excited to be part of the Foxborough team. But what's exciting for me coming to Foxborough is being able to work with Mike and Michelle. They are true leaders and champions as principals, and the work that Mike has done at the IGO school parallels a lot of the philosophies and ambitions that I've had over my time as a principal. And it is a wonderful school community at the IGO. I'm excited to continue the great work that he's done and to really bring forward, after coming back from a period of time, to really bring even more to the forefront of the strengths that live at the IGO. So I'm excited to be part of a smaller team. I was the only early elementary preschool principal in Plainville. I was the preschool to 3rd grade principal. So I was in some ways the leader for that, and then we had one principal next door. So I'm excited to grow and learn and be a part of an early elementary team, but also be able to be a part of a team where I get to see middle school and high school and from the whole gamut. So I'm very excited coming to an area that I am familiar with. I've been able to do some collaboration in the past with Foxborough on different curriculums and academics, but I'm very much excited and eager to be a part of the Foxborough team. It's exciting for me. Ask away.
Any questions from the committee members?
I don't have any questions, but I will say welcome. I feel like, just in addition to what Amy said, I've also heard, I have some friends that live in Plainville, and they were very excited for you and had been very pleased with their experiences. So thank you so much for coming to work with us.
I'm excited. Yeah.
I don't have any questions, but I did read through your whole resume, and I liked that you put down what your goals were back in 1992, and that you've stayed true to that since throughout your career as an educator, and I think it mirrors our philosophy here in Foxborough, and I think you'll be a good fit.
Every opportunity for growth or for diversity in my professionalism that I was asked, it always was important for me to remain grounded to the students, because that truly is the core of why we go to work every day. That's why we're here. Whether it was as a coach or as an inclusion teacher or even as a principal, I feel my connection to the kids and the teachers and the work that we do is the most important. So I enjoy being in the classrooms every day. I love watching the teachers try new things and take risks and try something new that they've learned through professional development and say, Kate, you need to come see this, look what we did. So for me, it really is about being a part of the school and being a part of the kids' learning.
Excellent.
So I think I just have one question, is that obviously this is challenging times coming in as a principal for an elementary school we don't know what the fall is going to look like. Do you have any thoughts or plans as to how to reach out to parents during that time of kind of transition as it gets closer to the fall?
I know that, as I'm sure an admin team, as well as Mike and Michelle and myself, will be able to do some real thinking outside the box. So it's going to be about safety first. So I think we need to make sure that we can follow the guidelines. For me, I'd love to be able to do some safe meet and greets, to be able to have some opportunities, whether it be with families, whether it be with students, to really be able to get to know them and also to know their worries about coming back to school, because there's a lot that we need to do to make sure that the students and the families feel good about walking through the doors, and that we're going to be able to provide an education, but also an environment where the kids are going to be happy and safe and as they're learning. So I think we need to, as Amy said earlier, follow the data, but we need to, when the opportunity is able to be able to be done safely, is to be able to have those relationship initiations of really getting to know one another. And I want families to be able to ask me questions. It may be, as I tell my families now, if somebody is at home worrying about something small, it's not small to them because they're worrying. So my families at Jackson know very loud and clear that my message is always, pick up the phone, say, Kate, I need to talk to you, shoot me an email. I will make myself available at any time. So we can work through whatever the worry is, because I don't want anyone to be worried, and there will be worry when we come back to the buildings. And so we really need, sometimes I call parents, for preschool, I have the 3- and 4-year-olds that I often unload the cars with, and I will say to the families, I know that Mary might be crying right now, but either myself or the teacher or the secretary will call you within 10 minutes and give you an update. And those types of things, we're able to eliminate 3 hours of worry until pickup. So I think that reassurance, that comes with trust and time, but the more opportunity to build those relationships, for me, it's very important for families to know that I'm here and for whatever they need.
Thank you very much.
Some of it we don't know yet, but I think we're going to think outside the box and create those as they come along.
Right, and with all that unknown creates more worry.
Sure.
And so that's
and somebody
where,
new, I think
right.
so. And clearly following big shoes with Mike. Mike is loved and so well respected and knows his families, and that's something that him and I have spoken about at length, and that he also feels the importance of getting to know all of his students and his families too. So that's something that I've said is very important to me. I was able to email back and forth with Jared, the PTO president at the IGO school today, so it was nice to be able to do a little get to know you also there too. So I'll meet with them and start the relationship building there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to say I was on the interview committee and had a great opportunity to meet you the first time. So I would echo all the things you've already assessed. I thought that your interview was one of the strongest I've ever done. I've been in education for a few years myself, and you were able to articulate your vision, your belief system, but also your foundation of where you make your decision making, and you articulated that very well. So I would appear that would give you great success for the future. You have a great team to work with, obviously, and I want to make sure I do thank the team for all being here. If anyone's watching TV, this is why we're successful in Foxborough, is because the team of leaders are all here together as one, with the same vision and as a team. So thank you all for being here to greet Kate. Kate, I think you're going to be part of a great team. I think it's a great team that holds high expectations for yourself, and the team will hold it for you. But thank you for being a part of that, and really welcome.
Yeah, it's excellent to have all of our other principals up there, and then Dr. Einsel as well from
And that's
special
Diana
education.
up in the corner in case you can't tell who it is.
I get you a ring light, Diana.
Thank
She's
you, everybody.
incognito.
I'm very excited to be part of your admin team. The work that you do is tremendous. The connection that you have with students from preschool through 12th grade is impressive, and I'm really excited to be part of your team.
Thank you all for being with us tonight. Congratulations. Welcome to Foxborough.
We're excited to have you, Kate. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thanks.
Hey, nice to meet
Stick
you.
around for a little bit if that's all right.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Welcome to.
You'll learn about me. I like to
We've got a lot of good stuff coming up in this agenda.
Hey, we've done well. We're almost back on time. We're like 4 minutes off. We've done good.
Right.
Nice job, Mr. Chair.
So I think next on the agenda is the remote learning and planning for September. Dr. Berdos and Dr. Mello will talk about the survey results around this.
So we have a PowerPoint presentation that was in your packet. We actually ended up adding a couple of different slides, which you have the updated packet in front of you, and that's what you'll see up here. We realized from all of the many notes that we had, there were a couple that were left off. And as we've reflected over the last 3 months and the phases that we have completed with remote learning, we know that in the beginning when we had the closure on March 13th, it began that first phase with providing enrichment opportunities. We then, as we extended the closure, we moved into the second phase, which was a review of prior learning and really a focus on the social emotional learning of our students and having those connections and also feeding families that were in need and having those people reach out to those that really were maybe not engaging at the beginning, and again, really focusing on the connections with families and students. And then as we knew that we were in for the extended closure, that third phase, which began in April when the governor ordered all of us to be closed for the remainder of the year after we got over being really, really sad and disappointed, we moved into new learning and what students needed to know to be successful at the next grade level. So we've learned a lot through this process. I think it's really important that when we think about remote learning and the difference between distance learning, we really were in an emergency remote learning situation. And the slide that's up there, it says, in contrast to experiences that are planned from the beginning and designed to be online, emergency remote learning is a temporary shift of instructional delivery to an alternate delivery mode due to crisis circumstances. And clearly we've been in a crisis and we've had to pivot and we've had to learn and we've had to problem solve and think outside of the box and make adjustments in so many different ways in order to continue with remote learning. And we've learned a lot, and all of that we've learned through this is definitely going to guide us as we move forward. And hopefully we're not in this exact same situation in the future. We don't know, but we need to be prepared for it. And as we started off with the COVID-19 update, just by being able to go one-to-one and having devices and having equity and access for all of our students, we will be in a very different situation as we move forward. But there truly is a difference in emergency remote learning versus distance learning. Teachers were not prepared to teach online. Many college professors, when they went out, they weren't prepared for that as well. And so we've shifted and we've learned a lot under this unprecedented experiment with distance learning, if you will. We've had hiccups, and we're going to find ways to move forward, but at the same time, we also recognize the balance and the juggling that not only our faculty have had to do, it's our families and really juggling, and our frontline workers and our essential workers. And you know, we're really thankful to our families in working with us. And when we get to the survey here in a minute and the results and talk about what that looked like, we're really pleased that they took the time to share with us their comments. They're not all great. We had some great comments too. At the same time, we know that taking the surveys and taking that information, just as we did with the prior surveys, it allowed us to adjust. So our initial surveys that we had 5 different surveys that went out to parents during the time. And the purpose of those was really to look at our learning plans. Was it manageable? Was it too much? And make shifts and adjustments. And we saw that in the survey feedback, the perception pieces of that, with families being appreciative that we did read it, we did ask, and that we did make adjustments as we moved forward. But again, we know that initially we were really attending to the pressing needs of the social, emotional learning and safety of students, and then looking at engagement and those students that weren't engaging, because we don't have control over that when they're not with us, and reaching out, and guidance counselors and principals checking with families when we didn't have the engagement. And we also know too that many families struggled with the motivation with students. It can be hard to be in school and to be motivated at time, and now take that and be remote and have a student in front of a computer screen. It's a whole different situation. So it was a leap in many ways for teachers and students and families. But again, the survey, when we think about where we've been, because we had Microsoft Teams in grades 5 to 12, we were then able to add that at the elementary level and to be able to have the video conferencing capabilities for elementary students once they had email addresses. Because we had the laptop carts, then we were able to deploy some additional laptops. We deployed over 200 for those that lacked a device. And then importantly, because we have consistency in our curriculum, we were in our collaborative teams that meet, they were able to meet. They met every single week for hours and planning the learning plans going forward. And I will say that what we saw with our administrators and with their teams and participating on those, it made our teams even stronger through this process as they learned together. They were strong and collaborative to begin with, but when you are planning in a very different way, it made them able to provide the continuity in the learning plans. Because we lacked enough devices for every student, we were not able to teach live lessons. We know that, and we know that that's one of the biggest themes that we see within the survey data that we'll talk about, not being able to have live instruction with students. Because we lacked a secure dynamic platform, going back to Zoom, we were not able to have video conferencing with an entire class at a time. And so engaging students in smaller groups was the only way through the video conferencing instead of a whole class at a time. And then where we were in an emergency remote learning situation, we were unable to have that daily schedule for students where some would say, well, why can't you just duplicate the classroom and take the same class? We know that it was a half a school day as far as the remote learning itself, but we also know that we had families sharing devices, and that came out in many of the comments too. And they didn't have devices for every child, and at the same time, so many parents were working from home. And so whether they had connectivity challenges or whether they just had the time for devices, that made it more challenging as well. But where are we going? And that's the important part here, is that, as we said before, because of the CARES Act funding, we're able to purchase the devices for every student and for all of our teachers, so we're moving one-to-one. And that will give us the ability to have the live instruction, the synchronous connection, and have more of a schedule for classes, because everyone will have the access and the equity will be there. We won't be in an emergency remote learning mode because we're not going to be reactive. We're going to be able to be proactive in that we're planning for the fall. We also know that we'll be able to administer assessments, and where we've been in a credit, no credit situation this year, and that's comments as well, that students don't want to necessarily do the work if they're not receiving a grade. So that will be different in the fall too, if we find ourselves in that situation. And then as far as a video platform that would have a whole class that would be able to be seen at once. WebEx, we've heard a lot about that, and that is up and running. We've used it for our last few administrator meetings, and that allows for greater tiles to be seen at one time, even though Microsoft Teams did expand the number of tiles. So providing whole group interactions, which would provide more of the socialization too, because we know it was so important for students to be able to see their friends. That came out very loud and clear too. So the purpose of the survey that we administered was really to see what worked, what didn't, take that information and plan for the future, and then at the same time think about some things from family perspectives that maybe we weren't aware of. And I will say that we had 1,152 respondents. The other piece to this is because of the open comment boxes that families could write in their thoughts and expand, they did. And when we looked at those comments, we had 5,569 comments, and some of them were paragraphs. Information. So what I would say to families is thank you for providing that feedback to us. We've read every single comment that's there, and it ranges from when we ask, what did we do well, from the comment that was absolutely nothing, to the comments that were effusive, and thank you so much for the teachers and being able to manage all of this, and thank you for checking in on my student. So what we did out of all of those comments really looked for the themes and what came out of those. And so that's what you're going to see that we're going to share with you. But at the same time, we can look and see the average amount of time that families spent in answering the survey, and the average time across those over 1,000 respondents was 28 minutes. So it wasn't a quick survey. So if you have over 5,000 comments, you can imagine the information that was there. And there was a lot of really great compliments to our administrators, to our communication, to our staff, but at the same time, we know that we weren't one-to-one, and we were not able to offer the live instruction. And so the comments reflected that, We also know that we'll be in a different situation going forward, but this information makes us think about things a little bit differently, too. So as we look at the remote learning activities, and was it too much? Was it just right? Or was it too little? I'll stop talking and turn it over to Dr. Mello.
So this was a question we asked in every single survey that we had launched previously. And in the initial surveys, meeting with the teams each week to share the feedback, we were really able to use the parent feedback to adjust the remote learning activities. So we were really happy to see consistently across the district that the majority of parents perceived the remote learning activities to be just right. I think what I also see when I look at this is we always knew that there was going to be a group of parents who felt that it was too little, and we always knew there was going to be a group of parents who thought it would be too much, because it really depends on your home situation and different variables that you have. So trying to be in that sweet spot of just right and having that be the majority for all of our schools was really important to us and something that we worked really hard to achieve. So remember, we were striving for a half of a full school day, and some parents may have wanted more than that, so we tried to have our may-dos and our must-dos, and so there were some comments that really reflected an appreciation for having the may-dos so that people could do a little bit more if they so desired. People commented in relation to the remote learning activities on the next slide. Now, as Dr. Berto said, there were well over 5,000 comments, so we're just going to highlight a couple here. One of the comments was, we only have one computer, and one of my children finds getting information on all of her classes difficult. Another one was, it was a mix. Some classes were too much work and some were reasonable. I think that was particularly true with, obviously, the middle and high school, where students had more teachers that they were interacting with. Another comment was, initially remote learning was overwhelming for both my children and me. Once I answered the surveys and the workload was adjusted to must-dos and may-dos, it was much more manageable. Those were comments we were obviously very happy to see, because that's what we were going for. As Dr. Berto said, we asked the question, what did we do well? And I didn't put nothing as one of the comments, although there were those comments. One of the comments that I thought is something we've talked about a lot at this table was understanding that home lives may be different and under various stressors, not taking out judgment when typically well-performing students aren't performing at their best. Another comment was, I think it was a quick pivot. That was no easy task. I think adjustments have been made to accommodate needs and in responding to feedback, and it's good to be asked. So that was nice to hear that there was appreciation, because I think we did get some survey fatigue after a while. People were tired of the surveys, which was totally understandable. One of the areas that I think that we received the most positive feedback was around communication and the accessibility of our teachers. So a comment, the communication has been great and the teacher availability was excellent. I think the district did a great job considering the circumstances. For IEP students, accommodations and modifications have been very helpful. I know there's a lot here, so if there's anything I'm going past that you want to interject and ask a question about, please feel free. Otherwise, I'm going to keep going.
Allison, actually, Richard, if I might. The comment about the student that was having getting information on all of her classes, found that difficult. We're going to address that, because that is something I actually saw a lot of comments on, on social media, was the difficulty, particularly middle school age kids, it seems, and of having, to look in many places to figure out what their assignments were, and some end of the year stress involved in figuring out what was missing and what needed to be done before the end of the year.
Yes, and that definitely came out in the comments. So I think what we had read, what we were aware of, is there was the homework hub was set up on the COVID page, and people could go into the homework hub, because parents can't see Microsoft Teams, as you know. But it seemed to be more that once they were in, there were different links to different other platforms that made it a little bit confusing. So I think that we will talk about that a little bit later. Yeah. Any other?
Yeah, can I just jump on that real quick? What I found in middle school and high school, and it wasn't just myself, it was other parents as well, is, one of the things with, especially I think high school, was assigning tasks and assignments overall at different times of day, and having something like, all of a sudden there's an assignment that's coming out at after hours, like at 8 or 9 o'clock, and it's due the next morning. Stuff like that, which was very frustrating for my kids.
I'm sure it was.
Yeah, and so, but it's just, and that's something that over time, you're hoping that people, teachers will clear up. And what I also saw was that it was just very, it was hard to answer some of the surveys to say, okay, is it just right for the amount of work, or too much or too less, because it could be in one subject one way and in another subject another way. Right. So those beginning surveys, that was what was, as a parent, you're kind of struggling because there wasn't a comment section. Right. And so having that comment section, I think, was really helpful to be able to differentiate that.
And actually, that was by design in the beginning. We wanted just quantitative data because we were trying to turn it around within a day's time and get it back to, because the survey would go out on a Wednesday and then the meetings were on a Thursday. It took a couple weeks to go through the 5,000 comments. They were very valuable to us, and this survey has the purpose for the long-term planning where that was in the immediate, so I definitely appreciate that, but it was intentional. I think to your point, we had a plan where we would post the learning plans on Sunday nights, and I know I was part of that for the elementary school. I think in some of the content areas, they really felt they were responding to the learning that had happened in more real time, and I think the intention was good, but I understand how that could be very frustrating, especially if the kids didn't know to look that something new was posted.
Right, and sometimes it was kind of the child would turn it in, and then the teacher would want something more, would have them make changes, and would give a very short time frame to have that turned back in before they were releasing answers. So then the child might not wind up getting credit because they missed it. They didn't see that
in time.
Right. And so that was kind of a frustrating kind of piece, I would think.
One of the good things that I haven't had time to go through completely yet is that the high school teachers, and so I don't know if you're talking more high school, middle school, but the high school teachers all got together and shared what worked for them and what didn't work for them. And I know that was part of the conversation, was how do you do the feedback loop and how do you time it? Right. So I've seen a little bit of it, but I know that's part of the professional conversation that we'll continue to have as we prepare to be more proactive and move forward.
That's good. Thank you.
All right, so what needs improvement? These are just, in each of these scenarios where we're showing the comments, these are representative of the themes that Dr. Bertos mentioned, because it would be impossible to show all the comments. So we heard a lot about the need for instruction to be live. So we have a comment providing actual lessons, whether pre-recorded, so students can access at their convenience, or live at set times each week, so that there would be that consistency. That ties very well with, up in the right corner, improve the video platform so students can see most of their classmates during the class or meeting. And we know that's a huge piece, not only of the academic component, but of the social component. And we heard a lot that one of the major concerns of parents was the social isolation of their student. In the middle on the bottom, I would love to have fewer places, this goes to Tina's point, to look for all the information. Teams is okay, but I wish we were on Google. Between email, Teams post versus assignments tab, and teacher websites, I feel things are falling through the cracks. Figuring out what you have to do when should be quick and easy. So I think that came out loud and clear. It was one of the themes that we heard. We wanted to know for our own information, what were the biggest challenges that families were experiencing at home? Because we've sat here and talked about internet issues and sharing devices and being a frontline worker and having anxiety. So we really wanted to see what that looked like when we asked families that. So when we look at it in a graphic form.
Allison?
Yes.
Before you go on to this slide,
sure.
I think it's very important, going back to what we talked about at the very beginning of the meeting, what we talked about here as far as what we know is going to be different, understanding that we could not do live classes because we couldn't be equitable.
Yes.
Is a very important thing that I don't think a lot of people in our community still understand. Yeah. They think it was because we were caught off guard, not because we have a requirement to provide equal access to all of our students, and because we have not been, for many reasons that we've decided on as a community, we are not a one-to-one community, or had not been a one-to-one community, and therefore live classroom sessions were not an option for us.
Correct.
Not out of desire or lack of desire, but we could not do it and provide equitable learning opportunities. So we know we have that covered, but I know to this day, I still hope people don't understand why their kid in private school could do it, but their next door neighbor's child could not. That is the reason why.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I think that's well said, and thank you for restating it. That did come out as well. We heard this school, people named the school, they're doing it. I will say, interestingly enough, we had surveyed our teachers as well, and they expressed a very similar desire to want to do the live instruction. That is where they thrive, is in the back and forth with the students. So moving to one-to-one is really important for us to be able to provide that equity and access so that we can do that. So thank you. Thank you for bringing that up. That's a good point.
But you also bring up an important issue for parents to have as their homework for the summer, and that is we can't provide internet into everybody's home.
Right.
So when you're looking at what you have for resources, you also need to make sure that you have the resources that once we give you the equipment, that your student could have it. So if you had a family of 5 people and all 5 were going to be on at the same time, which would happen.
Welcome to my house.
Exactly.
Right.
Is your internet capable of doing that?
Right.
And if it's not, that would create a problem, even though we've given you the equipment to do it. So I think it's kind of a point that we need to kind of put out there, because it's not something that we're providing at that point. At that point, we've provided a piece of equipment, but if it's not operating because you don't have the ability on your side, and we can't come into your house to do something, to enhance that, I hope that parents are thinking that at some point it will probably be something that does happen in the fall, one way or the other, even if it's for short bursts. They need to make sure that that's a capability that they have.
Yes.
And hopefully they can.
I think that's a great point. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. When we look at the biggest challenges experienced at home, out of the 6 options that we had listed, and we did have an other category, adults working remotely was obviously the biggest challenge at home. I think that would even be true for our own teachers, especially those who had small children at home. When we look at sharing of devices being an issue, anxiety about what's happening in the world, and adults being essential workers, those were really the ones, and fairly consistent across the district as well. We were very interested in hearing, and we gave a pretty exhaustive list about what are your biggest concerns and challenges with remote learning, because we really didn't want to leave anything off. So you'll see there are 19 things that we listed on that list. When we look at it graphically, you can see that across, we're going to move the slide, Mike. One more. Thank you. It was daunting that it was consistent across the district that the effects of social isolation were that was really the biggest concern that parents had. And that was reflected in a lot of the comments, and they really want them to come to school so that they can be back with their peers and have that experience. Obviously, we didn't need a survey to tell us that parents would want more live interaction with teachers or live instruction. I mean, that was very obvious to us. And motivation. And, that one is, we have the same challenge in school sometimes, so it wasn't really that surprising that parents can have trouble motivating their students. What I took from that is that we could provide more resources to help with that, and we probably didn't have a lot of those on our COVID site. Having it be as consistent as it was across the district was pretty eye-opening. I will say there was one that was unique to elementary school that is not included in the graph, and it was the impact of juggling working at home with having the remote learning, because younger children need more assistance from their families.
Sure.
Comments for this one, and again, there were many. These are just a few that reflect the themes. We received a laptop from the school, which was great help, but it is slow, and the mouse pad on it is very finicky, and my child could not use it. And that begs the question, was it the device or was it the service? We don't really know, but we will have new devices, so that will be good. In the lower corner, my child did not like the virtual interactions, and we did hear this from some teachers as well, where they could see students who were very uncomfortable engaging in that environment. He said it made him uncomfortable. Because of this, I did not make him join any more meetings because it was not mandatory. In the middle, concerned that the academic experience is not as exceptional as what we are used to in the classroom, quality and content concerns. And then in the lower right, going back to the graph, motivating my children to do the work, the effects of social isolation on my children, sharing devices, the need for more live interaction with teachers and classmates. Very consistent across the district, not surprising at all. However, in thinking about the role of this survey and planning for a more proactive approach, should we be in this position in the future, we really wanted to see what were parents' preference for learning, because we did hear pretty strong on both sides for the pre-recorded and the live video instruction. There are benefits, pros and cons to both. So you can see the choices we had there. And when we look at the preferred remote learning strategies, live instruction was very strong. People have a strong desire for that. Pre-recorded lessons, a lot of parents did point out the benefits of that, and I've seen that with my own child, being able to replay the video and learn at your own pace and have access to that. One parent, or maybe more than one, did suggest having the live learning captured, and then you could have sort of the best of both worlds, and then a set daily schedule. And people did like the social emotional check-ins as well. They thought that was important. They didn't want to lose that and trade it off for instruction. They thought there was place for both. We did ask, which we were brave, we said, were there any benefits to remote learning? And we were surprised that people came up with quite a few benefits. So they saw more independence from their children. They saw that they learned to work at their own pace. Definitely the benefits of sleeping in. We heard that from people. They like their sleep schedules better. For some, it eased school anxiety, built self-reliance, organizational skills, time management, all these critical skills we know that will serve them well. More time outside when the weather was cooperative, not during all those rainy months. They learned about their own personal learning style. They gained some self-discipline, and it reduced their overall stress. For some, I know for some it raised their stress, but some people did note that as a benefit. So as we moved to thinking about really critical questions for our planning, one of the main questions we wanted an answer to was, if all recommended and mandated safety precautions are in place, do you plan to send your child back to school? And I have to say, I was very surprised at how high the percentages were. I guess I shouldn't have been, having read the comments. But having a district average of almost 93% of people wanting their students back in school, I think speaks very highly of the classroom experience that people get here and how much they miss it. And you can see it was really consistent across the district. So it wasn't like there was, oh, high school kids don't need to be, no, it was consistent. Everybody wants their children to be back in the fall.
But then interesting on that, I think it's important too, and we learned as far as the way that we asked the question in the survey. I was speaking with a parent who said in that question, I want my children back in school, but they answered no to this one.
That's right, yeah.
Because they looked at it as, I want my child back in school for normalcy. I don't want them wearing a mask. I don't want these other things that we need to do that are going to come from the CDC or, from the Department of Ed. So they said, I answered no. I said, that's really helpful, because as we design more survey or to get input through our subcommittees that will be working this summer and tried to getting input from parents, that we need to change the way we word that question or ask a little bit more, dig a little bit deeper on that. And in that conversation with that parent, they had said they had spoken with another parent who also answered no. So still to have that high in the 90 percentile of sending back, some of the ones that were in that smaller sliver there that said no, they want them back, but they don't want them to have to wear a mask, depending on what we end up hearing from the state of what has to be in place.
And that was a lot in the comments as well.
Yeah, I was going to comment on that and say almost exactly that. I mean, I've got asthma and I've been wearing a mask this whole time, and I have a headache. And I have a headache because I'm wearing the mask, because I'm breathing my own CO2, and I've got a child that has asthma. And there is very little chance that he will make it through a day wearing a mask. He just won't be able to do it. And that's where, from what I've heard from other parents, what we've heard on Facebook and so forth, is learning is really important, the social emotional is really important, the normalcy is really important. And part of, some of the stuff that's come out over the past couple weeks, I mean, people are looking at that going like, well, I'm not going to send my kid to that, in that type of environment where they don't get up out of their chair, where they don't have the ability to feel normal at all. And so that I could see from that very small sliver, probably a good amount of them, that's the reason that's a no. Yes, people are going to be afraid about the COVID and so forth. But I think more at this point is the fear of you know, what are some of these kids, what's going to happen to some of these kids when they're home alone because parents are returning back to work and the kids are home alone? And they're in middle school and they're in high school and they're depressed and their friends are depressed, or they're outside doing other things that the parents can't monitor. And so there's a lot of fears and anxieties that are out there, and trying to balance what really is the most risk is really hard for parents. And I think as a school system, we need to keep kind of all of that in mind as well.
Yeah, it's really challenging for us too, because we're trying to weigh all those same things. And the word depression came up more than once in the comments, and that's it's not something that you want to see related to children. It's really disturbing, and seeing that the social isolation had that big of an impact, because I think I watch my own kids and they're on FaceTime and they're on Snapchat, and it didn't seem to bother them as much. But they're in college, they're not in middle school. And an article just came out about why the profound effect on middle schoolers in particular, where they're trying to find their identity, and so much of that is the daily interaction. So I think that is an excellent point. I think it's real. And as Dr. Berto said, we will be enlisting the feedback of parents throughout the summer as an important stakeholder in our decision-making process as we move forward. So there will be other less robust survey. They won't be as long as this one, but they will still be out there. Did you have something, Bill? So just a couple, we're almost through this, but a couple more comments just to back up that point. You know, there were a lot of parents who were concerned about safety and said, I just don't see how we can do it safely. And they're worried, and I understand that. Or at the bottom, based on how unknown the situation is, it's critical that the school be prepared to support both at school learning and under these conditions, and online learning, and that's what we are actively preparing for, so that we can be ready to be in a situation where we can pivot in a way that's much more effective than doing it in an emergency situation. And one more comment, I think the learning environment and social interaction is very important for student development, and hope that the school buildings do open, and for 5 days a week. On-site learning for part of the week will be very challenging to manage for working parents, as you said. So these themes are not unique to any one family. They're pervasive, and they make sense. We thought it was important, if we're asking if you plan to come to school, do you plan on taking the bus if you're a bus rider? Because that would be an important consideration if we have reduced capacity on our buses. So if you quickly look at that graph, you can see that 71% across the district said they would continue to use the school district provided bus transportation if they're a bus rider. Obviously it's lower at the high school because kids have their license, some of them, and they drive. So that is really important data for us in considering whatever the CDC and DPH guidelines are, and how that will work, knowing how many people are planning to take advantage of that service.
Excuse me. How does that compare to our current percentage of kids who ride the bus?
Well, this would be of bus riders. So.
No, I know, but I know there are kids. I mean, we provide bus service to all of our students, right?
Right.
Well, I mean, all
Outside
the students who
outside
are
the radius.
outside of the 1 mile radius. Sorry, but within that, you know, the number that we currently provide transportation to, I know there are kids who never take the bus because their parents drive them already. So do we have an idea from our transportation department of what percentage of our kids regularly take the bus now?
We do. Unfortunately, I can't give it to you right now.
Sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
I think you get a prize. I have never seen him stump before.
I know.
Actually, I think this is the first time in 8 years I've done that.
I think you're right.
So I'm just curious if
it's a good question.
More people would be choosing. I think if I had
on the elementary level,
kids,
it's very high. I know that for a fact, and as said, on the high school level, it's very low.
Yeah,
correct. So it's really interesting when you go from that overall scope of things, but the other side of it, this question was really talking to strictly the people that take the bus.
Right.
So it wasn't talking to the person who doesn't normally take the bus. Would you come back on it?
Yeah.
So, at least the way I understand the question.
Right. Yeah, that's how it was intended to be. But I think Tina does raise another important question about that gray area of, yes, I'm registered as a bus rider, but I don't actually ever take the bus.
My children haven't taken the bus, since Jack got his driver's license. Right. I know that means Sam didn't drive. I mean, he didn't take the bus all through high school. So
But we're still, our bus stop, you know, they stop it at the end of our road every morning just
They wait for the Ballingers.
Well, and it was available to them if, you know, they lost their
I do think it's
driving
more common
privileges.
at the high school where they drop off than the other levels. It seems to be.
Yeah.
And I think that as we plan for the fall and as we move forward, as we started this, that we're expecting the governor to state what the state of the state is going to look like for schools. Will provide that guidance to us. We will then share that with families and what that looks like and what we've been doing, but at the same time, anticipate with all of the subcommittees that I've talked about at their previous meetings, that when appropriate to reach out to get feedback from families with more specific data that relates to transportation or to schools. We will do that. So, you know, that information will be shared throughout the summer. We'll ask for anything that would help us in that planning. And we will actively plan and then knowing too that it could change over the summer. But again, as we stated, we want our students back in the physical buildings, and we are doing everything we can to plan for that.
So I think that was the first burning question that you just addressed.
There you go.
The other burning question was, will we shift to Google Classroom or another digital platform? That came up quite a bit in the comments. The answer is not this fall. The turnaround time would have disrupted our technology review, which we had already approved at school committee. We really want to do it right. We want to be thorough. We want to research the different platforms and then take the year to train not only our teachers and our staff, but our parents and our students, because they have adjusted for better or for worse right now to Teams and to Buzz. So we really want to take the time and do it correctly. We do anticipate some sort of change, but we heard a lot about Canvas too. So Google Classroom, Canvas, Ingenuity, Schoology, there's a lot out there. So we're going to be looking and doing a thorough examination. Any other questions?
No.
Thanks for your attention.
Thank you. This was
There was a lot.
I failed in my first meeting by like 28 minutes.
No,
already.
you're good.
It's a lot. We got
Thank you for not printing out all 5,000 comments.
You're welcome.
But thank you for everyone for making comments, I should say.
Yeah, I was going to say that. That's a lot of comments. And thank you all for reading them and going through them. People should hear that loud and clear, that your comments were heard, they were accepted, and we'll use that information. So thank you.
Great.
Moving on. Everyone good? Move on. DESE SOA, Student Opportunity Act, and the Student Opportunity Plan.
So the Student Opportunity Plan is money that's coming additional to school systems based on the Chapter 70 funds. And it's interesting that they're having school committees vote on the plans, which normally with our grant funds, we've not had that. But I think that the reason is the state's focus also in really serving all students. And the plan itself that districts are required to submit is an evidence-based plan, and it's aimed at closing the persistent disparities in achievement among student subgroups. We've talked a lot here, particularly with my summary of my strategy for improvement in equity and looking at our subgroups and what are the gaps, and looking at the not just in the culture and climate survey data, but looking at all of our students of color, looking at our students that are economically disadvantaged, looking at our English language learners, and then specifically looking at our special education students. And so Dr. Einsel is actually still here just in case there's any part that, any question on this. But this plan, if you had a certain dollar amount, districts had to complete what they called the long form. And if you had a smaller amount of money, you had the short form. And this is a requirement really coming from the federal level that states had to have the accountability measure. And what they made clear to us in being able to get these funds, to be quite simple, is that we needed to say what we were using them for, but it wasn't a case of supplanting. It's continue to do what you're already doing, the initiatives that you have, and you can use that money to offset whatever cost you already have within your district. And then they wanted to ensure that you're looking at looking and intentionally focusing on student subgroups that are not achieving at the same level as at the same high level as their peers. Also engaging families, which we do through our culture and climate survey annually. Did not do that this year, for obvious reasons. But again, to adopt and deepen our practices that are specific to evidence-based programs that we already have in place. So this plan, they require certification of the school committee that you've seen this plan. And in this case, it's $84,500 for the dollars. It ends up being funds for offsetting costs for us in professional development in the area of inclusion, and also in aligning our curriculum, in thinking about project-based learning, thinking about how we're addressing those particular subgroups of students so that they are achieving at higher levels, closer to their peers, and that we are ensuring equity for all. So it's also offsetting a teacher within the district, special education, for co-teaching. So we've been working a lot in the area of what are our co-teaching instructional model look like, and moving to that to where we have more students that are benefiting from really the specialized instruction, but looking at scheduling and leveraging that more, looking at our entrance and exit criteria for special education students, thinking about the professional development for strategies when we think about our educational assistants that support special education teachers. So it's all what we've already talked about in the strategy for district improvement, and taking that as one of the Department of Ed lists 17 different evidence-based programs. We've identified 2 from that, which is supporting educators to implement high-quality aligned curriculum, and then the second, inclusion and co-teaching for students with disabilities in our English learners. So that's a mouthful.
Any questions from the committee about this?
I don't have any questions. I think it's very thorough.
I do too, for this grant, for the necessity for this program. So I don't think we need to vote on it, because just the, would you agree or not? Do we need to vote?
I need the school committee to vote to accept the plan.
To accept the plan?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll make a motion that the school committee vote to accept the student opportunity plan as presented to us this evening.
I second.
Second, Michelle? Thank you. Any further questions from the committee? All in favor to accept this plan as motioned? 4-0.
Thank you, and thank you, Dr. Einsel, for hanging in there too.
Thank you.
You.
We're getting all the work we can out of her before.
Yeah.
That's right.
At the end.
That's how we roll.
You're welcome to stay.
Bye, Sandra. Thank you.
I think next on it is a review of the superintendent's evaluation process.
So at this time, it's reviewing the process for you. As we know, the superintendent is the only evaluation that takes place in public. So in your packet, you have a lot of information that some of it is from earlier in the year, just to have it at your convenience, and some of it is new, particularly the self-assessment. So the slide that is up on the screen right now is the 5-step process. So just to kind of go back and review what that is, in the beginning of the school year in September, the self-assessment for myself takes place, and then devising what my goals will be based on that, what are the district needs, and then based on my goals that are presented to you in September, and the action steps that will go along with that, implementing what we do all year. In February, I present to you my mid-cycle review, which is looking at where I am on those goals as far as work in progress toward them. And then at the same time, it's what we've done historically is what's also in your packet from earlier this year, just for your convenience, is, you know, what am I working really hard on? What are some things I'm particularly proud of, and what are some challenges that still exist? At that point in time in February, when that was presented, thinking about the challenges, we didn't have any idea.
You want to do over? Is that
what was coming?
How did she miss it?
So, you know, when we think about where we are here at the end, and I'm going to report out on my goals, one of them was kind of derailed because of COVID-19, but the rest of them progressed towards those goals. I'm still really happy with what we were able to achieve as a district, and then personally myself. So the process itself is different this year in that I'm piloting, as you know, the Department of Education's program for superintendents and school committees. And what that program is doing is taking the superintendent rubric, which covers 4 standards and about 33 different elements. They took that rubric, which is what all superintendents are assessed on. They updated it in 2019, but then in order to look at really boiling it down to salient points of what, because we know that in different years you're focusing on different aspects under the standards when we're thinking about from management and operations to professional culture to teaching and learning, and identifying 1 to 2 indicators under each of the standards to focus on. And I'm participating in that at the end of this year. It'll be myself and Tina as being the chair for the year, that we will report out on how did it go with using this rubric that was devised to be more relevant to school committees, and then at the same time be comprehensive but promote consistency and transparency throughout the process. So that indicator rubric for superintendent evaluation is, again, looking at what are the focus areas for this school year. So Mike, if you could go to the next slide. So these are the 4 standards that all educators are evaluated against. Standard 1, instructional leadership. Standard 2, management and operations. Standard 3, family and community engagement. And Standard 4, professional culture. So when you see A, B, C, D under each of those are the indicators. Under each of those, then you have the elements. And so as part of this pilot process, it's a matter of, let's not look at every single element. Let's identify the indicators. So I have them highlighted in yellow, which are the focus areas for this year that you would be able to zone in on this indicator rubric and say, well, what does it look like as far as the outcome from a transparency standpoint, and again, what was the focus for the school year? This is where each of my goals would connect back to these indicators, as well as any of the work that I've done throughout the school year under these standards as well. So under that first standard of instructional leadership, the focus indicators for this year was under D, evaluation, and then E, data-informed decision-making, and that connects to goals 1, 2, and 4, which I'll talk about in just a second. Under management and operations, environment and fiscal systems. Instead of looking at everything, it helps kind of focus in on this year. Standard 3, communication, and Standard 4, focusing on cultural proficiency and shared vision. So as I give an update on my goals and then looking at some of the things that I've done under each of these standards, this process for you as school committee members will be to take my self-assessment, connect it back to that rubric, and see the evidence that is there. And then at the same time, any additional evidence that you need, I will be able to provide that to you as well. So the most important piece, aside from the rubric and assessing that, is really the self-assessment and the goals document. You have that in front of you. The type would be way too small to have it up on the screen, but I think by having the indicators up there, it would be helpful. The goals from this school year, my student learning goal really goes to looking at equity gaps and the work that we're doing with monitoring student learning and growth and developing the capacity of staff to recognize any bias that we have, and looking at our student population and looking at those different groups of students and really analyzing the data very differently than we've done in the past. So we've conducted, I started at the administrator level doing a district equity exercise for an equity audit, looking at what our student groups, when we look at MCAS data, and then we also have other data within the district that we've used. And so looking at the rubric, if you were to tie that back, it talks about, am I able to lead the administrator team to identifying and using multiple sources of evidence? What does that look like? Am I involving stakeholders to the creation of district improvement and action plans? Am I regularly monitoring and sharing the progress with the community? So when you think about examples of that, the OECD test results and presenting that, analyzing that, our baseline and benchmarks report, the equity audits that I've done at admin teams, and then they take that and then they follow that same process for schools and looking at data and our curriculum directors. And then in our professional learning communities and looking at data in a way that we haven't really drilled down so much in the past. The student opportunity plan and writing that as you had that entire plan, again, that just shows some of the data analysis and really looking at the disparities that are there, and then what we're going to do to address that. My professional practice goal, as you're aware, continuing in the 3-year program of the new superintendent induction program. That one, where we meet for full content days once a month, became virtual meetings towards the end of the year, and I think they multiplied the number of meetings, and that was a different experience, but we continued with that, and that is a big time commitment, and I will continue with that next year as well, although it will look a little bit differently. But one of the things that is, I think, a really important part of that, by having a coach through the new superintendent's induction program, she attended so many of our administrator meetings to watch me, to watch the feedback, all of my school site visits that took place in every school, watching as I'm walking through classrooms with principals, and we're talking about feedback and talking about teaching and learning. And it's a great experience to be able to not only have that as a benefit for me, but all of our other administrators benefited from the program as well. And just the relationship we've built with Dr. LaCroix has really been an amazing resource to the district, aside from me. District improvement goal and creating this, the district strategy. So I presented that in September. I did have a typo where it said it was September 16th, 2020. It's actually 2019. And I included that for your benefit again, although that was presented in September. Now, this is where you see significant progress on this goal. This will end up being a 2-year goal, which many times that happens even with our teachers because of not being able to have the whole group together. The second district improvement goal was the educator evaluation work group. I will speak to that actually in another agenda item with our Appendix D for collective bargaining on evaluation, but we were able to have the FEA vote as far as the changes, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. And then the other goal that I had here was to continue to actively participate and monitor the construction phase as far as the borough project. And that's really exciting. I mean, even this week, the temporary classrooms are going up in the gym with walls and the grids for the ceilings, and there's been many meetings aside from the school building committee meetings when it's looking at how are we going to number classrooms and what does that look like. Like, you don't think about all of the different little decisions that come along the way, but the site visits are really exciting, particularly at this point in time. So those are the goals, progress towards the goals. You have a lot more information in your packet. When we look at the 4 standards, again, that will go back to those focus indicators. I will go over those rather quickly because there's a lot of information for you to read on your own than to meet with me individually, which has been really helpful in the past to provide any clarification. But before I move on, any questions on the goals?
Do you, maybe you get to this, or maybe this isn't, it could be an invalid question. Was there any goal that was more impacted by the pandemic than another?
Yes, the one that I was just talking about, the Planning for Success team that I brought on board for our strategic planning, which was
is why you said you significant progress.
Yes,
for yourself. Okay.
I had hoped that we would have all, and we've got the objectives pretty much drafted, but the action plan that goes along with that, I had hoped to have that by June, and not being able to bring that 33-member team together in person. We tried by video conferencing. It's not the same.
Right.
It's just not the same. So that one definitely was derailed.
Okay.
For that reason.
Thank you.
So each of the 4 standards, if we focus on the indicators, which I think is more valuable for you as a school committee to be able to look at what was most important for this current school year and where the efforts were under instructional leadership. The evaluation, when we look at that particular one, it's talking about ensuring effective and timely supervision and evaluation of staff in alignment with state regulations and contract provisions. So when we think about state regulations, just having our Appendix D with our teacher evaluation aligned to the latest regulations. That's an example in working with that group all year. Supporting and developing our new middle school principal. When you have new administrators on board, even though they may have been in the district, they're in a new role, and the support and time that's involved is, it's really important there. Continuing with all of my site visits in every school, every single week, every single month. Those are the best parts, being in with the students and looking at teaching and learning. And that's what I love most in walking into a classroom, and a teacher and students, they don't take a second look. They're accustomed to all of us actually being in classrooms and be able to walk in and to see what kids are doing and talk about the learning that's taking place, and to know that I can still be right there is really important. So the observations and feedback, as you know, I'm going with principals as well, is helpful. I have here talking about Dr. LaCroix. She has attended many of our administrator meetings, and I honestly think that she's attended some of them when she didn't really need to, because she loved our administrative team. Because she's talked all of these different virtual meetings we've had with other superintendents, she's talked about how strong our team is and how well we work together, and that we are all on the same page as far as teaching and learning, and that's our focus. It's great that the vision is there. As far as data-formed decision-making, again, leading our administrator team and starting with that equity work and equity audits, and if this is what it looks like at the district level, and then asking them to come back to an administrator meeting, what does this look like at your school? And then having those conversations. Looking at data and talking about problems of practice. Looking at even the survey data from this evening and taking that information and responding to it, and asking some of those questions, but then again, what are we going to do with the information? So I think that whether it's the OECD test results that I presented back in the fall, or we're looking at baseline and benchmarks, we're really strong in this district at looking at multiple forms of data and using that to inform going forward. So you have a whole list of other things that are there. Under management and operations, the second standard, the focus indicator, was environment and fiscal systems. When we think about environment, particularly when you go to the rubric and it's talking about developing and executing effective plans, procedures, routines, operational systems for the full range of safety and then health and well-being of our students, when I started looking at all of the different things that we've accomplished and thinking about from a safety perspective, and actually listing when I had Chief Laracy come in for our administrator meeting, when I had Chief Baker before he retired, I had him come and do presentations for all of our staff, but for new staff back in the fall, and he came and he did that. Really focusing on all of the safety plans and procedures and processes we have in the district, and keeping that at the forefront, because having a safe environment is what's most important in order for then learning to take place. Bringing in the Stop the Bleed training and having all of our teachers trained in tourniquet training. That's not something that they had ever thought about, honestly. And so when we were going to engage in a part of our professional development day on that, that was like, well, that's not something that we've had in the past. But we know that if we can be there, and even if you're in an art classroom and something happens, just having some of that, first aid, it's really important to, again, a safe learning environment. So you have a number of things listed there as far as promoting a safe and supportive learning environment. And I had to take this one where you have a lot of quotes, and I wanted to share them, because when we think about communication and in this COVID-19 closure, how important it is for all of our faculty and staff to be able to feel supported in their environment. We started the Amy and Allison shows, which is a video that we recorded to be able to share out with all of our staff. And it was really surprising at first. We started to get feedback from teachers about how important it was, because whether it was from motivating them to let them know they were supported, to let them know that we understand the challenges that they're going through. So I listed a number of quotes. There were a lot more. And it was motivating for us to continue. The last one that we did was on the last day of school, and that one was 18 minutes long. They weren't all that long, but we were able to give them updates, feedback from what we were hearing, at the same time to the questions that they were having, address it in that way, and honestly, in a video format versus reading one more thing on the computer screen.
Yeah. When we saw people at all those parades and clap-outs, they were like, is there another Amy and Allison show coming? And it was like must-see TV.
Right.
And then as far as fiscal systems, from all of our budget meetings that we've had this year, it's one that we are very responsive to looking at what are our needs and responding. And this year was particularly difficult, and where we've had reductions in pieces of FTEs based on, we've had reductions at the elementary level because of declining enrollment for a number of years now, but now we've started to see that at the secondary level and needing to respond and adjust. The third standard, family and community engagement. Communication was the focus indicator. There are a number of things that are listed there, a couple that I'll just point out. I don't think that I've communicated in any other time more so than since March. When you think of all of the letters that I've sent out, in addition to what I've done in the past with the community evening for parents, anyone can come, the parent leaders meeting. Communicating in a different way, which was fun with the Superintendent Student Advisory Council with the hashtag, the borough 02035, and all of the tweets and being able to see. That was another way to share out some information in an easy way. We had some really good feedback on that. And then obviously all of the COVID updates we've had here at school committee. So communication has been front and center all year, but particularly more so since March. The last standard, standard 4, professional culture. The 2 focus indicators, commitment to high standards and cultural proficiency. Again, the commitment to high standards here, I think it is shown in the work that we've done and through my entry plan and the findings and the 33 focus groups that helped inform that strategy for improvement going forward, and then the planning for success and the work that we've done this year and will continue. But I also would say that the administrator meetings that we have, and when I'm putting together the agenda, our focus is always on students and high standards. And we start off with articles and problems of practice depending on, we alternate between that. And I think that it's not just administrivia, which so many meetings are. And that has been something that I know that Dr. LaCroix, when she's visited and she's talked about it, and that was one of the reasons too they asked me to present at the superintendent meeting in November, because of the work and our focus on students and high standards and the types of conversations that we're engaging in, and the work that's starting at the district level and then goes to the school levels. So our professional development has focused on that. I started with bringing in Kathy Lopes, the Director of Equity and Inclusion for METCO, back at our administrator retreat in August. Then as a result of that, one of the principals had her come into a staff meeting, and we've continued with our cultural proficiency professional development. And we've been working on that for a number of years now. And with our Preventing and Minimizing Bias and Discrimination Committee that was formed 3 years ago now, we've reconvened that in the last year to bring that back. We've worked really hard in looking at, are our students represented in our curriculum? Are they represented on the walls in our classrooms? And particularly now, and what we're living through right now, and focusing, I'm so proud of the work. We still have work to do, but I am so proud of our focus in that area, and looking at our curriculum and looking at our instructional practices and looking at the kinds of conversations and the book studies and the courageous conversations and the work that has come out of that, starting at the district level and then going to the school level. And I really think that when you think about the rubric that you look at, and it talks about empowering, and it talks about leading, and having that then trickle down to the different schools, you see that in all of the different activities that are taking place. Even most recently with Ron Jones, he was scheduled to come in for one of our faculty meetings at the middle school in April. It didn't happen. So what did we do instead? Virtually. We didn't know, honestly, if all of the teachers would participate. We had over 50 teachers on the video conference call at the middle school. It went so well in that diversity dialogue that then it took place at the middle school, at the high school. And this was still going through June. So it starts, and then you see it in different ways at the different school levels, which I think really speaks to all of our administrators, and that we all are really committed to all of our students, and what can we continue to do to meet all of their needs and continue to learn and grow.
I'll just add to that that the teachers now are having the book studies this summer as a result of those conversations too, initiated by them as part of our professional development, which is amazing.
That's great.
So that's a lot of information, even though I talked a lot just then as part of this, just the process. You have a lot there. If there's anything else that you feel that you need, I can provide that to you. And it's always been helpful too to meet individually with you on any of this. So I would look forward to meeting with you as well.
I would ask, I think last year you were able to give us the blank, so that we could type them. You emailed us the digital form so that we could type in, because it was great, because the squares expanded and you could fit a lot more text that way. So if you could do that, and Richard, I guess, our process typically is that the members do their evaluations and then have their meetings with Amy and then provide them to you as chair, and then you put it all together in a composite, and I can certainly give you an example from last year.
Thank you very much.
To work with. We've used a similar format, I think, since the very first evaluation of Mrs. Spinelli back in 2012. So, and I don't know, I stepped out for a moment, so if this was already said, but Michelle.
I was going to tell her that.
Yeah, you don't have to do it.
You're off the hook for this one.
but we will have to get Bevy.
We're going to loop Bevy. We'll loop Bevy back in since she sat through the year.
Yeah.
So.
But I would still love to meet with you individually.
And I would urge you
as far as this
yeah.
process too.
What was the deadline we normally?
So usually we try to have the composite ready for our summer retreat, which we have not selected a date for yet. And I did typically, try to give myself in the past a week or two to put together the composite. So it really depends when we decide to meet in July.
So why don't we'll decide on that date, and we'll work backwards.
Work backwards.
That sound
on
good?
That's great.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Thank you. Anything else? Any more information we need?
That's all I can think of at
Very
this
thorough.
point.
Thank you. Thanks for outlining that, and thanks for highlighting, bringing our attention to things too. Because you're right. There's a lot of reading there. There's a lot of stuff there.
Yeah.
So I think that's valuable. I appreciate it.
Are you going to take your show on the road?
Yeah.
Wait, Bill's look was the best of the three of yours. I
can only imagine. I didn't see his look.
Okay.
That was the don't encourage them one.
So let's move on to our vote on the revised Foxborough collective bargaining agreement of evaluation system. I think you all received it, the red strike-through highlighted version there. So do you want to take us through that a little bit?
Sure. And what I can do is give you the 30,000-foot view here. So the educator evaluation system came into effect, to what Tina just said, in 2012 at that time. And all of the regulations with model contract language, and then we had negotiated that, and that's what our current Appendix D is. At that time, it was anticipated that we would have, in addition to where teachers are evaluated, same as with myself, you have an overall rating, and you have a rating for each of the 4 standards. They would also end up having a student impact rating based on district determined measures. That was in the original regulations that came forward, and that has now been taken out of the regulations for a whole host of reasons. But we know that the impact that teachers have on students and performance is still a really critical part of what we're doing in classrooms. So to recognize that, the regulations have changed where they've taken a student impact, taken away the student impact rating. So instead of giving a teacher another rating besides those 5 that they already receive on the evaluation process, that they've embedded within Standard 2, teaching of all students, that we are focusing on what is the impact that educators have on their students in classrooms. But that's a really important conversation with goal setting, by looking at school improvement and where we are even as a district. So the language that talked about district determined measures, the language that talked about giving a student impact rating, that has come out. And so in 2018, they updated the language, or actually they updated the classroom teacher rubric to reflect that, and then the regulations changed. So as one of the pieces to our educator evaluation working group was to go back and get approval from the Foxborough Education Association on the new language that was there that aligns with the regulations, to have them either adopt or adapt the new classroom teacher rubric, and we have done that. So what you have before you takes into account that they have voted to adopt the classroom teacher rubric that reflects the regulatory changes, that the district determined measures that was eliminated but yet under standard 2, where we need to utilize the impact of student learning based on assessments, which we have common assessments, and so that's part of, even when they're creating their student learning goals now, we're looking back at, you heard a lot in the school improvement plans on writing goals. So there were a lot of writing goals at different grade levels this current school year, and looking at that within the data that we collect. So we have to have common assessments as part of that. And then survey feedback was another addition to the regulations, in that we know that it's really important to get feedback from students, and it's important to get feedback from administrators as well. So having it at a first grade kindergarten level looks different. Of how do you find out if your teacher's meeting students' needs there versus what it looks like at a secondary level? But we have to have that component within there. So the regulations are saying we'll use it. I can tell you, as part of the other work with the educator evaluation work group, was, well, what will our surveys look like? The Department of Ed has different model surveys. They have long ones, they have short ones, they have a combination. And so we've settled on what will the surveys look like that we're going to use for teachers to get student feedback that will inform how they're doing in the classroom. That's developmentally appropriate. So with that, you have Appendix D, you have track changes that are redlined, and it takes out the district determined measures, it puts in the common assessments. It also acknowledges that we will be using the impact of student learning within the evaluation, particularly under Standard 2. The association, it was their union leadership and checking with MTA, that because it just aligns with the state regulations, did they even need to have a vote because it's aligning with the regulations? And so they ended up having their union leadership vote. And so they've approved it, and we do need school committee approval as well.
You know, one question I had, I was just going through to make sure I remembered it. Under the self-directed growth plans, the old one had a 2-year and a 1-year self-directed. We've taken the 1 year out now.
It depends on whether you have professional status or whether you don't. If you have professional status, then you can be on self-directed growth plan moving forward. If you are professional status and you need to still have some goals that are more targeted and strategic, it allows for that as well.
Okay.
I don't have any questions.
Any other comments with that?
I'm happy to make a motion to approve the Appendix D to the Foxborough Collective Bargaining Agreement for Educator Evaluation, as presented.
I'll second it.
Any more discussion about that? All in favor of the motion as presented? 400. Thank you. Okay, moving right along. Textbook adoption, social studies textbook adoption.
Yes, and I think we'll, I think we'll make up a little time here, Richard.
I think so too.
You had such a thorough presentation last time, and the piece that we were missing was were the quotes for the textbook adoption. And fortunately, those have come in. So we are looking at, I'm just going to refresh your memory just quickly. In grade 5, they had a textbook that's over 20 years old, and it was not aligned with the new framework, so they are moving to a McGraw-Hill program. All of these are going to be digital, by the way. There are no more actual physical textbooks. It's U.S. History Making a New Nation. These are all 6-year adoptions, which take you from one curriculum review cycle to the next. In 6th grade, it is a 2-year program, and DESE is giving autonomy to school districts on how to approach the standards, so 6 and 7 will be splitting that. So there's actually 2 different texts, both McGraw-Hill, Discovering Our Past, A History of the World, and World Geography, Ancient Civ, and they're going to be breaking up the standards in a way that makes sense between those 2 grade levels. You heard a lot about the new 8th grade civics course, which is a major change and did not exist before, and the world history moving up to the high school as a result. So that is it's the History Alive program that they are familiar with and have used in the past. It's called Government Alive, and that is from TCI, also a 6-year subscription. And same for the high school. It's the History Alive version that takes them for the world history. They also had a book, you'll recall, that was over 20 years old. So at this time, we are looking to formally adopt these recommendations for program adoption.
Thank you. And Michelle, I don't know if you saw the last meeting we had. Did you see it?
Yeah.
So you're up to speed. So we went through this whole development, but we just didn't have this document. So thank you.
Any questions, though?
Any questions from anyone else here?
And thank you for your patience while we got this during these unusual times.
And thanks for presenting it to us.
Anytime.
Information is they're valuable. Someone want to offer a motion?
I'm happy to make a motion to approve the social studies K through 12 curriculum review textbook adoption request in the total amount of $48,393.
A second for that?
Second.
Second by Michelle. Thank you. Any further final discussion? All in favor of that adoption? 400.
And just one last thanks again to Kristen Dorico and Sue Shea for a fabulous, thorough review.
Yes, well done. Thank
She
you.
won't be able
And the
to
committee.
use them.
She's streaming. She's yeah, she won't be able to use them, but she's still watching at home. So give her a little shout out.
So there we go. Good job. Well, great. Now we're cranking the time out now. So some appointments. We got some committee appointments to do. I think each year we're looking for a couple, or for the policy subcommittee, budget subcommittee a couple, and liaison to rec department. So I have policy listed first.
I have served on both, and I'm happy to do whatever is necessary. So I guess I would ask Michelle and Rob if they have any preferences, as far as budget or policy. And
I do not. I think because of Brent's background, I think he brought a lot more to policy than I ever would.
We'll keep Brent on policy since he's not here. He seems he's doing a great job with it.
Yeah, so I'm happy to work with him, or I'm happy to work on the budget, which is where I work this year. So
I'm happy to stay too. I mean, I was with Brent on policy, but
as chair, you do not have to serve on the subcommittees because you will be busy with other things.
I can run for the hills. I get it, but I get it. So, do you have a preference?
It's a hard one. What's going on with
We also need rec. I want to make sure we also say rec is now, the rec department liaison is also absent because it was Bevy for many years. So we do need that one filled. There's no one sitting there at all now.
Yeah.
While it's not listed, I will stay on the school building. I need to stay on the school building committee
yes.
Yeah.
as well.
So I was going to say I'm leaning more towards policy at this point.
Okay.
But I know the budget as well, so that's
Really, it's
I'm
totally
really
fine. You and Brent would do wonderfully on policy, and we'll all have input on policy. So.
I'm happy to stay on the budget committee.
I'll be happy to serve on budget subcommittee with Rob as well.
So you want to go policy with Brent? Good. We don't need a vote on that, do we? No. It's just,
as long as we have consensus.
As long as we have consensus, right? So policy will be Brent and Michelle. Budget will be Rob and Tina. And then rec department.
So the liaison, Beverly, has been our liaison to the rec department for a number of years. I don't even know how many years, but she's faithfully done that. And I believe the liaison, attends the monthly meetings at the recreation department, which I believe are the second Monday of the month. They don't conflict, or typically don't conflict with our school committee meetings.
Bev has enjoyed it. She was very much appreciated by our recreation department, so. Does anybody have any interest in it? I could take it on for the year.
You could?
Yeah.
You sure?
Wow, thank you.
Or we
Okay.
could make Brent do it since he's not.
Yeah, I know that's just.
No, he's got a lot going on, so I'm happy to do it for the year.
Well, Tina, thank you for this year. Thank you very much. And you're going to stay with the building committee, which I
Yes.
think you need to anyways.
I think I have to stay with building committee, but I'd like to see that through. So my background as a lawyer was in construction litigation, so
Go.
it's a good fit for me. Not that we're going to have any litigation, and that's just to be clear on.
She will not be advising.
I go by every day because on my run route, I go by the Borough every day, and it has been so much fun the past several weeks. Just like every day, it's amazing. I know that's not where we are on the agenda. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
But it is just amazing. It's like this,
It's very exciting.
It's magical, yeah.
Okay, good. I think we're covered. Did I miss any?
Nope. We are all,
good. Okay,
all
good.
caught up with
We made it. Good. General plumbing services bid. Bill.
Yes, so as you know, we have a number of different contracts that we sign on either a 1 to a 3 year basis, and this year the plumbing service contract is up. We put it out to bid. As you can see, we did receive 3 bids in. Ironically, not one from the current supplier, but Stoughton Plumbing, who is the low bidder, we have worked with before. Matter of fact, he worked on the concession stand with us, and it worked really well. So it was kind of a nice precursor to see what his work ethic and his work style. Ironically, it's very close to Jeff Whitehouse, which is our in-house maintenance staff member, who's also a licensed plumber. They worked very well together. So this would actually be a good marriage for the town as far as when we need multiple people on a job, having Jeff be able to be our inside guy as well as having Stoughton Plumbing being the outside where they work together in the same way. So first year, as you can see, it was $100 an hour, second $110 and $120 for a licensed, $60, $65, and $70 for an apprentice. If you get into the overtime, it's $150 and $160. And quite honestly, the rates were considerably better, by almost 20 to 25% than the other 2 vendors. So very pleased to recommend Stoughton Plumbing and Heating as the low bidder and most qualified.
I'll move to approve move that the school committee awards Stoughton Plumbing and Heating the bid for 3 years with the stated hourly rates for fiscal year 21, 22, and 23.
Second.
Second by Rob. Any further discussion? Great. All in favor of awarding the bid as stated? 4-0-0. Great. Thank you. Donations. I think we have 2 of them, although the second one I'm going to, we have 2 of them, right?
Yes.
We have the batting cage and we have the running club. Correct. Is that correct?
Correct.
I think the batting cage was in our packet, right? Or not?
No.
I had trouble finding it, but I have it listed here.
No. Jim Malika basically came forward to Joe Cusack and offered to buy new netting for the batting cages at the high school. His son actually is a college player, didn't get a lot of activity this spring, and really was looking forward to doing this. Noticed that our netting had some rips in it and stuff, and made a generous donation to allow us to basically replace that. So I asked that you accept his. He did purchase it, so I accept the purchase as is, and we will install it.
Great.
We already have the cage itself, is just revising and updating the netting.
Is there a monetary figure or just general?
Unfortunately, I don't have the monetary figure. I just have the fact that he did buy it personally, but would be giving it to the school district.
Good.
Move to accept Mr. Malika's generous donation of the netting for the batting cages.
Second.
Second.
With gratitude.
With gratitude,
With
as
gratitude.
Always.
always. All in favor? 4-0-0. Thank you. And then I guess the other one was the running club. So
Correct.
thank you. The running club, we just received that, I think, today in our email packet, a $1,000 donation from the Wampanoag Roadrunners.
And they have made donations in the past too. So it's really their intent is just to help supplement the program internally, and again gives the freedom to the athletic director on how to use these funds to service the best for kids.
Great. Motion to accept that?
Motion to accept the check for $1,000 from the Wampanoag Roadrunners to help with any needs the track and field program has, with gratitude.
Thank you. Second? Michelle, second. There we go. Thank you. No more discussion? All in favor? 400. Thank you.
Glad they got their event in.
Yeah.
I know.
What do I have left here? So I think we're ready for someone who's come on to camera in a few moments here. Yes?
We're a couple minutes ahead of schedule.
Oh, so we're ahead of schedule.
So I know we caught up on time, so
we're going to
maybe we could skip to other matters for 5 minutes, and
Great.
then we're having some special recognition tonight.
Yes, we are. So why don't we skip to other matters, and we'll come back in a minute, if that's okay, right? Under other matters, I had one item was a July date. How best to select a July date for us, our next date. Good idea to do that tonight, or?
Well, we could propose a couple different dates and then have folks get back to Janet, or you can pick one.
Well, no, what would be best? What's everyone have preference? I don't know what you're planning and what your schedules are. How fast do you need to get your schedules firmed up to?
I'm not going anywhere. August is a different story, but July is.
Well, we're kind of at the end of June now. I mean, I would suggest perhaps mid to third week in
That's
July.
where I was kind of going. I was going
point.
13 or 20. I might have been even leaning on 20 myself, but
And July is usually the goal setting retreat at the chapel meeting house. I don't know if we're going to be able to do that from a socially distant.
We can do it here.
We could use the rec hall perhaps, is a little larger if it's available and they're letting people use it. I don't even know. We're in sort of in facility limbo at
maybe even
this
here
point.
too. We could come back here.
We could also use this facility as well, but we typically don't have that meeting. Is more of a retreat format and it's not generally televised.
Yes, the rec hall right now, under the current plans, the rec hall, I don't think is available for rental, but it is available for
Town use?
Yes. Or will become.
Well, the new liaison to the rec department could find that out, I suppose. Well, I'll look into that.
First order of business.
Yes,
We
Tina,
can,
that'd be
if we
good.
could move forward with a date.
So time, like what time, is it start at 7 like this, or do you start it earlier?
Retreat
That's
generally
what I
starts
thought.
a little bit earlier,
yeah.
and we've started, I think, at 6.
Yeah, either 5 or 6. Right?
Yeah.
I would have done.
Okay.
And you have to bring lots of chips for Bill.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Rob.
Wow.
So what kind of time frame? I mean, I'm happy to stop at 5. Start at 5 a little bit earlier. But
That's fine with me.
It's not trying to throw us into a tailspin either. But 5's fine by me. 5
works for me.
Start a little bit earlier. And then
fine.
what about a date? You want to shoot for the 20th of July?
I can do July 20th.
Yeah, July 20th.
Okay.
Looks good.
Good.
All right. I will look into that date for the rec hall.
Okay. So July 20, 5 p.m. We're going to shoot for July 20 at 5 p.m. And location TBA. See if the rec hall is available. So I'll just add, since I'm already on the mark for now the evaluation piece, right? If I work backwards a little bit quickly, allowing me a week or so to complete for the 20th. Is it possible by the end of next week for Tina, feedback for the superintendent's evaluation to me?
We meet with Amy first, right?
I think that we might need just a little
more time?
touch more time
Okay.
to
Yeah,
get in
good,
with
good.
Amy. as well. I
Okay, so we go 10?
keep-
We go one more week, July 10?
Yeah.
That's fair. Give you guys more time?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, good.
Does that work for you, Amy?
Yes, I'm not going anywhere, so I'll be easily accessible as far as all of the individual meetings.
So thank you, that's good.
Okay.
That's fine, great.
Great. All right. All right.
Are we in other matters still?
Yes, we are.
Okay. Can I throw one out?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Is it time for that?
Yeah, we're doing other matters. We got another couple minutes
Okay.
to kill.
I neglected at the very beginning of this, Tina, to thank you for all the work that you did this year as the chair. So it's, I've known you for a few years. It's been a pleasure to work with you here. As I commented early on in this, everyone had to change. I've been very impressed and pleased, and I try to model some of the things that I've done after how you've approached this whole switch to being virtual and having to sit far apart, and because I know that it was not an easy transition for you. So I think I appreciate all the work you did this year, and I hope that Richard and I can do you proud, I guess.
Thank you so much, and I know that you will. So thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you. So do we want to, we'll come back to other matters. Thank you. That was great,
Yes,
because I
we
think
can.
timing is everything.
It is indeed.
So you want to lead? You want to lead a little bit?
I would be
Please.
happy to lead.
Please.
So we have a little special recognition this evening for a special member of our school committee family, really. Today is Joey Garrity's 22nd birthday, and it's his last day with our PAVE program. And so we wanted to wish him a happy birthday and thank him for his, I am pretty sure he has attended far more school committee meetings than I have, actually. And he was coming to them long before I got on the committee. And he helps keep us organized and on our toes, and always has good questions and good input at all our meetings. So Joey, happy birthday.
Thank you.
Joey, happy birthday. Okay.
Thank you.
Happy birthday. Okay, we've got a little echo there.
Okay.
And we have a Mrs. Spinelli as special guest on our Zoom.
Yes. Thank you for having me. Joe, your party parade today was wonderful. And oh, that's good. I think somebody fixed the audio. That's wonderful. Can you still hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So hi, Joe. You asked me today if I'd seen the school committee agenda with special recognition. I said, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you mean. But I'm happy that the school committee surprised you like this for not only your birthday today, but you've completed all of your programs at Foxborough High School, and you'll be moving on to everything else that awaits you in life. And I was so happy that they invited me to be part of this, because I've known you since you were young, and we've certainly been closer friends since you were in middle school. And Joe, you know how every time we write each other cards on special occasions, we always write how we're both so proud of our friendship. You know how we always write that? Yeah. Well, tonight it's just time to be proud of you for everything you've accomplished and how just so devoted you are to the goals you have in life and the love you have for life and all the people in this town, and your love for government and all the meetings that go on in town. You know everything about it. I used to rely on you for your memory of what things happened at certain times at certain meetings. And I'm just so proud of you, and I know everybody is, and I'm happy they invited me to be here to celebrate you. And I am really blessed to have you in my life, and I promise you I will always be in your love. So congratulations, Joe. This is your recognition.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate your recognition tonight. It made me feel special.
You are special.
You are special.
Special to us.
Does any other members?
Thank you. I want to thank the Foxborough Public Schools District for the parade today, led by the Foxborough Police Department and the Foxborough Fire Department. It really made my day.
It was awesome.
Great. That's great.
And I want to have a special thanks to Dave Griffin and Dr. Sandra Einsel for coordinating this.
Nice.
Excellent, excellent. Well, Joe, I wanted to, in the short time I was able to meet and learn and know you for a couple years, Debbie said a few things about you, which I echo as well, but the three things that came to mind for me were your passion for just always being involved and always being focused and on top of things, your intelligence of it, knowing information, being able to understand the information and apply the information, and also your caring. There were many times in the school committee you brought to our attention the other students in the special needs program or other students that you know about or that you really cared about. And you brought that to our attention too. So I think those three characteristics have meant a lot to me. It's shown me who you are as a person. And I'm very confident that just those three on top of many things will carry you through life. So thank you for being who you are every day and doing what you do and just being there for all of us.
Thank you very much for your speech.
Yes, you're welcome.
Well said.
First of all, happy birthday, Joe. It was so good to see you on the parade with everyone else wishing you all of your warm birthday greetings, and then also seeing you in your cap and gown for graduating from the program too. And I just, when we talk about that being a beginning, I'm excited for you, for what you're going to begin next. But I'm also excited for us and that we know that we're still going to be able to see you because of your love for government, as Mrs. Spinelli said. And that you do remind us so much on so many things to think about, and then the questions that you raise, so you keep us on our toes, but more so just for who you are and the kindness that you spread to everyone within this community. And that is something this morning with your parade, is that people were excited to be able to celebrate you because of all that you do for the community. So thank you for being you. Thank you for being interested in all of the work that we do. And we're so proud of you and completing your work and your next step and what you're going to do, because we know that you're going to continue to be wonderful and do wonderful things.
Thank you very much. Even though I'm finished with school, I'll still follow school committee.
We know that you will.
We know that.
We're counting on it.
Absolutely, we do count on that.
One thing I did want to point out to Dr. Burdos was that when you first started as assistant superintendent about 9 years ago, remember with Mrs. Chmielewski and Mr. Williams, I wanted to do for ABC Daily 2, I wanted to involve you in a interview from a video, but Mrs. Chmielewski was trying to set that up. That was on her #1 priority list, but she just got caught up with so many other things during my 8th grade year.
Well, I'm so glad I've been able to have so many other conversations in the last 9 years with you, and that I see you all over town too. So it's always such a nice blessing when we see you.
Yeah,
it's nice.
Joe,
Nice.
I remember when I worked at the middle school, you would always come running out when I was walking by, and I knew I better pay attention to school committee because you had all the questions and you always knew more than me. And you made me feel very welcome at the middle school.
Me too.
You were one of my first friends there. So thank you. We're so proud of you. It was so special today. That is the biggest parade I have seen for anyone. And it shows how much everybody loves you and how important you are to the community. So we are proud of you and congratulations.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Sure.
Yeah, go, do it, yeah.
Hi, everybody. Maureen Delaney, obviously on the screen. I just wanted to really thank the whole public school system. I understand after 20 years in school administration how difficult some things can be and some challenges that we've had along the way. And really so appreciate that everybody went out of their way to make Joe have a really special day. So we appreciate that. Especially the school committee. Shout out.
A shout out to the Foxborough Public Schools and the Foxborough School Committee.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you. Happy birthday, Joe.
Thank you.
Happy birthday, Joe.
Happy birthday,
Thank
Joe.
you very
Thank
much.
you. Thank you.
Great.
And then Deb Spinelli, do you remember the time when when I wanted to bring this up during a school committee meeting 5 years ago, but then I emailed it to you, then you emailed it to all your school committee members, It was about a joke that a history teacher made up because we lost so much learning time from MCAP Park and field trips. And then he said, instead of going on field trips, why don't we just have a field trip to school from 7:30 to 2 o'clock, go to all your academic classes, go to your elective, go to your physical education class, and then go to the cafeteria, beautiful looking cafeteria, for a delicious lunch.
I thought that was a great
gotta go to bed.
Given everything that students and parents have had to do for the last couple of months, I bet they'd be thrilled to have an in-house field trip. Got to go to their classes and see their teachers. That would be great.
And the worst part about it was when we lost so much learning time that year from park testing.
All right. Such a memory.
Wait, thank you.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Good night, Joe.
Agenda tonight.
Good night, Deb. Thank you.
Joe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Happy birthday again, Joe.
Bye-bye.
Deb, thank you for jumping on. Thank you.
Thanks.
That was great.
Why is it still sunny where she is?
I think that must be
I think
her
it's the
photo
background.
lights.
I think it's the
Yeah.
background.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, background.
That was background.
Okay, thank you.
I've seen a lot of those.
What island is she on?
And Tina, thanks for making that possible. I saw the emails, and I know you guys got them. So
great.
Thank you for your work in making that happen.
Very happy to do it for Joe. I'm
Great.
glad he had a great day, and he certainly has been a major contributor over the years.
Absolutely.
Truly.
At our meetings, for sure.
Other matters? Rob, anything else?
No.
There you go.
I did want to say one thing I feel remiss in not mentioning when I was the chair was thanking our student representatives from the Student Council. So I just wanted to take a minute to thank Chris Anderson and Kiara Pacini for their contributions. We definitely have missed having student voice at our table, and our student representatives are always wonderful, and Chris and Kiara had some great contributions, through March or until March when we had to start meeting in this format. But I really just wanted to thank them tonight because I hadn't yet. So
Well said. Well said. Thank you.
thank you. That's it for me.
Any other matters?
Well, I think one of the things to kind of better understand with everything that's going on kind of in the United States with inclusion and race relations and everything like that, is there something, and I know I've looked at what the past committee meetings have been, and I try so hard and I cannot wear it. So just wanted to kind of have a better understanding of how that and the impact of all of that is going to be planned for next year, for the coming fall. And I think a lot of what's so difficult is from I think a parent perspective, there's so many things that are unknown. And when kids have questions, it's so hard to know how to answer those questions. And I think that that's kind of what parents, all of us, are getting to the point where we're kind of like coming out of isolation and trying to figure out what, quote, the new normal looks like. And it's so frustrating to not be able to know for yourself or for your kids. And so I'm kind of combining two questions into kind of one. And kind of New Matters is trying to figure out, are things going to be somewhat different, or is there going to be a reaction to kind of what's going on? But then also, when should parents and kids have a better understanding of what the fall is going to look like? And I know that you were answering before that we're still waiting on the governor, and the governor could change their minds in August. That could be more open or it could be less, we don't know. And that's where just having some timeline for parents, and really it's for the kids to have kind of a concept, something to look forward to, might be really helpful for them, especially those that are planners. that are out there.
I'm sure that you can answer regarding the way that you plan to communicate, but I just want to say that we also survey the students, and the concerns are very clear from them too, and they want to be back. So it actually, the thing that frustrated me about the survey was that I couldn't respond to them, because I would love to be able to know who answered and how to communicate with them. So I think what you raise is an important point about we communicate with parents, but how and when and can we communicate with students as well, and not just rely on their parents. I think that's an interesting question for us to think about.
As far as the timeline, as soon as the information is presented, I mean, we will put that out there. If we're told that in September that we can come back, but you have to have these particular safeguards in place, you can be assured that we are planning and are going to have everything. We already are, as far as that piece. And as soon as we have any information to provide that timeline, we will provide that to families. We know that students are asking about sports. They want to know. We're taking online, we're doing the registration for sports. That we're planning right now to be in person, scheduling all of our meetings. When we think about open house, I mean, some of the things that are different are our incoming kindergartners right now, because they've not been able to have the kindergarten screening that we typically do in the spring. Right. So just even this week, getting all of the email addresses to be able to communicate information to our incoming kindergarten parents. They may receive them if they have older siblings, but if it's their first time, they don't have that information. So being able to send that to them as well and keep them updated. So what I would say to answer is that as soon as we have information, we will continue to put that out, what that looks like, and update along the way. And then we're also planning for, when we think about recovery and coming back, not just from an academic standpoint and looking at where our students are, by looking at our end-of-year benchmark assessments and being able to use that as a diagnostic tool, and really leveraging our support staff, reading specialists, math specialists, to accelerate any gaps that we have from a curriculum and instruction standpoint right from the beginning, but at the same time, and thinking about the social emotional piece. And we have a subcommittee there working what are the questions that are going to come up, and they're going to come up in so many different ways, and to be ready for our students that way. So we have a subcommittee that is more on the social emotional learning, and that the conversations of what's going on in the world today and what they're grappling with, when we talk about having difficult conversations or marking the moment through all of the professional development we've had so far, taking that and continuing to apply that and to have those conversations to make sure we're best meeting the needs of our students.
And I would add, I don't know if you saw at a previous school committee meeting, we had the 24 educators who have received the certification in trauma. Yep. Since this happened, there has been an uptick in teachers registering for Trauma 1 and Trauma 2 who hadn't participated before, so much so that we could have supported our own cohort. We have so many, and it's because they want to be equipped to come in and have the, to be able to support students on the social emotional side. And on the social justice side, we built out a whole website for professional development, and that is probably one of the most robust pages with one of those massive open online content courses, a MOOC, like from Harvard, from Stanford. They have some really amazing courses that people want to participate in, podcasts, book studies, webinars, experts that we become communicated with through our METCO program and our METCO director. So there's a high interest there. People are feeling that they want to have those conversations so badly. They feel like they know they play that role in students' lives right now, and they're feeling that gap as well, and they want to be able to carry that on in a way that's productive and meaningful and appropriate when they come back. So they are actively training so that they'll be ready, which I think is great. Yeah. And I commented on that last time. I'm impressed by the level of engagement and stamina at this time of the year, because there's such a need and there's urgency around it.
Yeah.
So I guess the one thing I heard in what you asked that I think is still an outstanding question, and perhaps the way to answer the question, it's around timeline. So, and I know that it's very fluid, and there's a lot of this not in the control, but so in that case, are you planning, Amy, on continuing the regular communications out to families, maybe not weekly, or what is, so just so people are aware what decisions have been made, what things we're still waiting to learn about, because it is fluid. We don't know. You're at the you're at the mercy of the governor, the Department of Ed, but I think the communication is the piece that you're really trying to push for.
Yeah,
I heard that.
Exactly, and thank you very much, Rob. And that's where it's not just like, I'm not just talking about for my family. I'm seeing it on Facebook. I'm hearing it from friends. I'm hearing it from my kids' friends, too, is that there's so much that's unknown, that having some stability, you know, I always find it really interesting that no matter how old we get, we all still somewhat live on a school calendar. Like, oh, it's late August, it's September, I better start buckling down and getting, it's not necessarily it's the end of summer, it's that this is the time to kind of get to work. And that's what's been somewhat missing, is that there isn't that routine, there isn't that expectation of what's going to happen and when, and we as adults feel it. And kids, especially those that are in transitional time frames, you know, going into kindergarten, less so, but going into middle school, going into high school, there's so much that's unknown that this is the time they normally would have been thinking about it anyway. That having at least some expectations or even just more communication might be the
Here's what we know, here's what we don't know still, that kind of thing.
Something along that I would say communicating with some of the older kids, especially directly rather than through parents, because I find, and Tina, I don't know if you found that as well, and Rob, that have kids that age, you know, my son's always kind of like, I heard that there's an email that came out, what does it say? And so it's like I have to pass it along, especially when the kids that are in high school, it might be beneficial to kind of send some of those things just directly to the kids.
I think that reinforces a lesson that we learned earlier but didn't connect it to this, so thank you for saying it. We stopped surveying parents at one point and started surveying kids, because we like high school parents are more removed from what their kids are doing, and we got better data from the kids directly. So I think it's a very valid point.
I will just, you have college-age students, so you, I'm sure, get this as well, but we still need to do both, the parents and the students.
Which we did.
Colleges just send it to your college-age
because they're of age.
And they're like, so have you heard anything? Oh yeah, I got an email 2 weeks ago about that. So,
I'm not saying cut out parents.
No, neither are we. I mean, but we had gotten to the fatigue point with parents, and we pivoted to the kids, and we got really good data, and then we circled back to both the parents, the kids, and the staff. So I think it's a good point.
But I think it still comes down to, I definitely feel it on the superintendent calls. That's what we're saying to the commissioner, is that we're having all of our parents and students asking us, when you've said that 85% of it will be prescriptive of telling us based on health organizations and who they have on their task force and what they're saying of whether we can come back to school. Just as the governor closed, they're going to say whether or not we can come back to school in person. And we don't have that answer right now. We're waiting anxiously for that, and the message we've continued to send to the state level is that we need to know for our planning, and our parents are asking us, and we're out there and we can't answer that question. So as soon as we have that information, we will share it, and we're planning to be back in person, whatever that looks like. But at the same time, we know it will be the governor's decision of whether we're back.
I certainly think that we are on our mark here in Foxborough. I happen to serve on the Commissioner's Return to School Committee. He just spoke to us on Thursday, and he spoke to the superintendents on Friday. So Amy's right on target that we're going to find out some initial visionary plans, I think, this week, maybe as early as tomorrow. I think it's possible. And those are kind of, you know, pre-planning here, try this. And as a secondary piece of the puzzle, I do work with all the high schools for athletics. And trust me, the Sports Medicine Committee of the MIA and every state in this region in Section 1 is talking weekly about what are you doing in your state to bring our students back to athletics as well, too. But unfortunately, the unknowns are tremendous. They're just tremendous. And the risk to go too far into the unknown or into the abyss is quite dangerous, in my personal opinion. My opinion. So I think we have to wait for these kind of steps to fall out. I can assure you, I think the commissioner is on target to be in line and work closely with the governor and trying to put the whole package together. And I know they are, and they're engaged in it very actively. So I think we're going to start to hear a request for blueprints and ideas and thinking, but I do not think anyone is going to get a prescription right there in black and white on just about anything. That's my opinion.
No, and I also think it's critical that the citizens of the Commonwealth take this seriously and continue to follow the guidance, because if we don't, we will not go back to school because of issues coming back around and affecting us all again. So, it's not just 2,600 students; it's 450 employees that are also in those buildings, and so our guidance is to keep everybody safe. And I think that's really we have to make sure that the staff feels just as safe as the students and the parents do. So again, I think it's really going to be incumbent upon everybody to kind of do their thing, and not just think it's over, because it's not until we have a vaccine.
Absolutely, and I completely understand. I understand the position that the administration is in, being in the court system, and the courts right now are closed to the public, and we're getting new information daily as to what's going on with all of that, and I'm having to explain it to clients as to when can they go into court or not. So I understand how hard all of this is, and it's just, that's where I think the public and parents and kids, it's really hard to understand and to internalize it and try and figure out how to manage it. And it's such a challenge. So thank you.
Extraordinary, it really is. It's, and every question seems like it brings another question, right? Every time, okay, I think I'm getting somewhere, and then I just get 5 more questions. And
right.
Okay, so
and I have children in my own home.
Oh.
Out of my 4 children, 2 are still in high school, and they're asking me, don't you know something? I'm like,
you got it in, right? I mean, it's
what good are you? Exactly.
Agreed. Well, thank you very much for your thoughts, really. Any other matters from anyone else?
I have one. Dr. Berdos mentioned the kindergarten, the incoming kindergarten students. I just want to share for any who may be listening that we are actively building a website for incoming kindergarten students and families to share a lot of the information that we would normally share in person. We would have different events, profiles on the teachers, some information about routines and responsive classroom and things like that, just so that they will feel that they are involved in the communication loop and they will be ready for the expectations of kindergarten. And as Dr. Berto said, we have all their emails getting uploaded so that we will be able to loop them in as well. But that is another piece that should launch on July 1st, and they will have messages from all of the principals now that Mrs. Campbell is official. It should be great. We're excited about it. Overview of the curriculum, report card, everything. Questions they might have. So if you think of any questions that a kindergarten parent might have, send them my way.
Thank you.
Excellent.
So I have just 2 quick things. One is a thank you to Tina as well for your service last year, and also for me to be able to follow you in your guidance and your leadership and your wisdom. Please don't stop it, because I will need it. So thank you for what you've done, and thanks for being here again for another year. And I just want to do a huge, although it's very late, a huge thank you to the entire school staff for getting us to the finish line of the school year. We can say that every school year, can we not? But this finish line was extraordinary. So just, I don't even know how I could effuse about it enough, right? The staff took us to a place at the end that we never thought we'd have to go through to get there, and they did it, and they executed it. I think the staff did it on their backs, on their time, amongst their family challenges and trials and tribulations. And so, we can't thank them enough for understanding the conditions, going with us, and being there for us. And thank you for your leadership in making that all happen with the whole staff. So we got there to the end of the year. I'd love it not to look like this in September. Would that not be great for everyone? So let's fingers crossed and hope that some things happen and takes us to a different place. But thank you for a great year. Thank you.
Well said.
So I think we do need a motion to adjourn to executive session.
I would move that we adjourn our regular session and enter into executive session for the purpose of wage contract negotiations with non-union personnel, superintendent. And we need a roll call.
You need a roll call vote. Thank you. Rob?
Aye.
Aye.
Michelle?
Aye.
And aye, 4. Thank you very much. Meeting adjourned. Into executive session.
Into executive.
Thank you.
We will not be returning to.
That's right. Thank you.